legislation, how's that? By virtue of my appointment pursuant to the legislation by the governor, I serve as chair of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, and I thought I would ask each of the other commissioners to introduce themselves and enumerate their appointing authority. You want to start?
Sure.
Enrique?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Enrique Zuniga, by virtue of the appointment of the Treasurer and Receiver General Steve Grossman, I'm serving as an appointment to the Gaming Commission.
I'm Bruce Stebbins. I am an appointee to the Commission by the Governor, the Attorney General, and the Treasurer.
And I'm Gail Cameron. I also was appointed by the Governor, the Attorney General, and the Treasurer.
And I'm Jim McHugh. I was appointed by the Attorney General.
And they are a great group of people. I can attest to that. And thank you to our appointing authorities. This is a tremendously challenging and exciting opportunity. All of us have discussed frequently that the debate about whether or not to have expanded gaming in Massachusetts is over. It has been authorized by the representatives of the people and the governor, and we now are committed to trying to implement that public policy in the best way that we possibly can, and that's what we are undertaking to do. This will be the first of very, very many public meetings. This is an unusual situation. As many of you know, there are no other commissions in the Commonwealth that are made up of full-time commission members and that are in a startup mode and that have virtually no staff. And yet we operate under the same appropriate rules and regulations, particularly the open meeting law, that everybody else does. We're all sitting in the same office, but we have to be very sensitive to the letter and to the spirit of the open meeting law. This meeting is the first of many where we will be doing our regular business. In other environments, you might just sit in your office and have conversations with your peers. We can't do that. When we deliberate on anything, that is an open meeting if a forum of us are involved. So this will be one of many of our regular meetings. They may be as frequent as weekly or possibly even more frequent than that. There will be many, many opportunities for hearings. We are working, we'll talk more about this in a few minutes. We're working on an elaborate methodology and approach to outreach, and we will be asking to hear from the public and many different publics, but typically not at our regular business meetings, which this is. We take our mandate to design and implement a participatory, transparent, and fair process. This is the first step in that direction, and we are committed to making that be our top priority from every moment that we proceed. As part of that, this event is being streamed live on the web. It's on our website at mass.gov/gaming. As many of our meetings as we can possibly arrange will be streamed live on the web. They will be later stored on our web. And as we get a little bit more sophisticated, the video will be searchable. So wherever we hold our meetings, the people of Western Massachusetts, Central Massachusetts, North Shore, South Shore, Cape Cod, and the islands will have every bit as much access to our activities as anybody else in the Commonwealth. And indeed, we will be traveling around the Commonwealth in person talking to folks as well. There are copies of our agenda and our fact sheet in the room somewhere. Who has those? In the back of the room. I think we've mentioned that as we're in a learning mode ourselves, trying to understand exactly how we operate in this unusual environment, how we operate in this critically important public policy topic, and how we operate with this 5 full-time commissioner situation or status. For members of the press, we have asked that if you'd like to talk to us after this meeting, that you line up through or talk to Karen Schwartzman, whom I think you all know. We're perfectly happy to talk to people. We just want to do it in some slightly organized and systematic way. A lot of the content of this meeting you'll see is simply organizational, getting ourselves organized, getting a system built. When we started, we didn't have letterhead, we didn't have office space, we still have phones which are Metza, all of the basics. We do have office furniture, although our conference table is being delivered today, and we're moving up the ladder now to a little more serious, but still organizational. What the people of the Commonwealth really care about, and frankly what we really care about, is getting to the process of creating the value structure and the literal process by which we will ultimately make the decisions about where expanded gaming facilities will go, who will operate them, under what circumstances they will operate. That's what really matters. Everyone, I think, many people at least, are anxious that we do that as quickly as we can, but we're still just getting started. And a lot of this meeting, unlike other meetings, has to do with a lot of our administrative work. So we're now getting ready to do the really important work that's coming down the road. I think that's it by way of my opening comments. If I missed anything, please speak up. The second item on our agenda is the swearing in, and we've had to change that a little bit. We were not able, unfortunately, to have the governor come today to swear us in. We have done the technical swearing in under the statute so that we are empowered to operate, but we will be having a formal swearing in at a later date at the State House with the governor, and I'm sorry that we weren't able to do that now. The next item on our agenda, you'll see, is the adoption of a mission statement and Robert's Rules of Order, or at least that's the idea. I had felt that it would be useful to establish a mission statement right off the bat that would try to say to the public and to the participants in this process exactly what it is that we intend to be doing here. And I'd like to read a draft of a mission statement, and then we'll talk about it with the Commission, and if we can all agree, we'll adopt it. The mission statement that I'm suggesting reads as follows. The mission of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission is to create a fair, open, and transparent process for implementing the expanded gaming law passed by the legislature and signed by the governor in November 2011. In creating that process, the Commission will strive to ensure that its decision-making and regulatory systems engender the confidence of the public and the participants, and that they provide the greatest possible economic development benefits and revenues to the people of the Commonwealth, reduce to the maximum extent possible the potentially negative or unintended consequences of the new legislation, and allow an appropriate return on investment for gaming providers that assures the operation of casino resorts of only the highest quality. Anybody have any thoughts about the mission or our mission? Commissioner Zuniga, want to start?
Sure, yes. I like the spirit of the balance that the mission statement speaks to, which I've stated before as well, that it's incumbent upon this commission to balance the economic development goals of the Commonwealth, the jobs that it can generate. There's a real economic drive behind this, but also there's a need to balance that with what potentially could be an adverse or unintended consequence, as well as the realization of the financially feasible nature that these casinos or resorts really need to have. So I'm very happy with this draft and believe that the spirit of balance has really been achieved here.
Like any corporation, nonprofit, business, adopting a mission statement isn't just fluff. It's a critical statement, I think, to the public at large about who you are, and you're directing that comment to the public or potential customers. You ask any nonprofit or business about their mission statement, and chances are they've spent a considerable amount of time on it. You open up their company or nonprofit website, it's one of the first things that pops up. It drives them in how they operate. And it's commonly referred to whenever they meet with potential clients or customers or contributors. So I think our mission statement clearly outlines our guiding principles, how we're going to operate, but I think it also addresses three key stakeholders in this process. Certainly the first are the residents of Massachusetts. Secondly are the folks who are concerned about the unintended consequences of gaming. And third are our potential investors, the casino gaming operations that are considering Massachusetts, and understanding up front that we value their potential investment in the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
I also like the overall tone and balancing that we tried to create here with this statement. In thinking of my own contributions to the commission, I was focusing on, excuse me, the regulatory systems engender the confidence of public and the participants. My background with some oversight experience with the New Jersey State Police, this is something that really hits home for me and something I'll be striving to make sure that we do, that we achieve. And also the part of the statement that talks about reducing the maximum extent of the potentially negative or unintended. And again, I think of partnerships here, how important it is for all of us to work together to really reduce that. And I've had meetings with the Attorney General's office and our federal partners here in the state, and the state police certainly. And I've just been really, really pleased with the focus and how much people want to work together here in the Commonwealth. And I'm very hopeful that we can achieve all of these parts to this mission statement.
Mr. Chairman, like the others of my colleagues, I think this is an excellent mission statement. This commission has, by statute, a great deal of power and discretion over matters that can deeply affect the communities throughout the Commonwealth. And it's important that in exercising that power and that discretion that we be fair, that we be open, that we be transparent, that we build confidence in the process so that in the end, regardless of the decision we make, people will know that they've been heard and that we have listened to their concerns and the things they want us to hear. The mission statement describes the three primary goals, as I see them, of the statute: economic development for the benefit of citizens, reduction of undesirable side effects, and creation of high-quality jobs. But public confidence in the process by which the Commission seeks to achieve those ends is, in the end, of the utmost importance. So I support this because it captures those ideas.
Thank you very much. I want to add a thought here, and it's something that I think needs to be a theme throughout our conversations, and it's a line that we're going to have to learn how to walk. It may be perceived to a certain extent as unusual to have in the mission statement setting out the objective that our providers can get an appropriate return on investment. It's kind of a funny thing to put in, but I am very mindful. One of my prior experiences was with the cable television industry years and years ago, and in those days, the public sector that was licensing the cable television industries got very excited about how they could put pressure on the cable operators that wanted to come into each of their communities, particularly the big communities, and they put out standards that were not viable. They asked for so much that they forced effectively the providers to offer more than they could promise, and many of the deals didn't work. We have to find a really careful balance here where we can get every penny and every item of mitigation as we can possibly get for the people of Massachusetts, but we have to do it in a way that lets these folks see that by bringing big money into our Commonwealth and investing in our Commonwealth, that they can get the kind of return they want. And it's going to be it's not going to be an easy line to walk, and it's going to go into much of our future of how we get to our RFP, how we get to our specs. Do we really understand what the economic viability is in the community? And because in order to do this, we're going to have to really understand the economics of this business in our Commonwealth. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, I'm not sure. But I wanted to expand on that point because I think it's a little bit unusual. I hope in the long run it will be considered by the industry as a positive sign. You know, we want competition. We want you to come here. We want you to be successful. And to the extent that it's consistent with our regulatory role, we will collaborate with you to try to make that happen. Any other discussion about the proposed statement?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the Commission statement as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the mission statement as read?
Aye.
Say aye. All opposed? And so the motion passes. Our first motion, I believe. Hooray! Big stuff. we're off to the races. Nobody laughed. Thank you. All right, next on item 4 is the adoption. We referred in the agenda to the adoption of Robert's Rules of Order. We've subsequently been talking with other entities, and as I said to you, there are not other entities like ours. But we do need to adopt some kind of basic rules of the road for the conduct of these meetings. I think it will be more informal than formal. But I wanted to ask Commissioner McHugh if you would speak a little bit to this agenda item.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, that we do need some rules. I think that, obviously, but I think that the main thrust of Robert's Rules of Orders, which is a large volume of rules for almost any contingency that can arise in a meeting, contains much that we're not going to ever encounter, the 5 of us. Those are rules that are universal rules for the governance of town meetings, for the governance of legislative bodies, for the governance of all kinds of large groups. And so I think that what we ought to do is adopt rules of order that are modeled on Robert's Rules of Order and use them as a general guide to our conduct of business in the Commission and in our Commission meetings. So I'd move that we adopt as a general guideline for the conduct of our business Robert's Rules of Order.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion on this business? Again, I think we're going to learn as we go here on how this operates. I think we don't want to overly structure this, but we do want to have rules of the road as we need them. And I think, for the time being at least, this gives us sort of an appropriate starting point. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to adopt generally the principles of Robert's Rules?
Aye.
Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 2 down. Thank you. Item number 4, the legislation calls for the election of a secretary and a treasurer from the commissioners. And I have done a little bit of prior work on seeing if we might get people to be willing to serve. And I would like to ask if we have any nominations for the office of Secretary of the Mass Gaming Commission.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner James McHugh to serve as our secretary.
I would second that nomination.
Thank you. Any discussion on the? Oh, are there other nominations? You might get lucky.
Oh, it's an
Jim.
uncontested election.
Okay, discussion on the nomination of Commissioner Jim McHugh. I will just say, for the record, I served with Commissioner then Judge McHugh on the so-called Harshbarger Commission, which looked into hiring and promotional practices in the Massachusetts judiciary after the probation scandal. And I can say that what he brings to this role is a sense of fairness and judiciousness that is unparalleled, and I'm going to be casting my vote in his favor.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add to that the many years of experience of Judge McHugh in the proceedings, the public laws of this Commonwealth, I believe make him an excellent candidate to be in the role of the Secretary for this Commission.
Great. Any other discussion? All in favor of the election of Commissioner James McHugh as Secretary of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is passed.
Thank you.
We are next asked to elect a treasurer. And again, I've done some spade work, and I think we have a candidate. Do I have a nomination for the office of treasurer?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate my colleague Enrique Zuniga as treasurer. Since joining this commission, I've taken a fond appreciation of his financial background and expertise, and think he'd be a great candidate for this slot.
Great. Do I have a second?
I second.
Any other nominations? There being none, I call for discussion of this nomination.
Mr. Chairman, I support the nomination. Commissioner Zuniga has the background and the experience to deal with this and deal with the sometimes complicated financial responsibilities that the Commission is going to have, and he's displayed in the short time that I've been working with him a zealous approach to our internal structure and how we approach the public trust we have, and I think he'd be an excellent candidate for this job.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to nominate Enrique Zuniga as the treasurer of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The mission passed unanimously. Welcome. Item number 5, procurement rules. I told you this was going to be a lot of housekeeping stuff, folks. It's going to get better in the future. Those of you on the web, I promise you it's going to get better in the future, but we got a lot of housekeeping to do. I'm sorry. We are going to be doing a lot of procurement. We're a very little operation right now. We have 5 commissioners, and we have 3 staff, and we have essentially 6 desks, but we will be doing a lot of procuring. We do need to have controlling rules in place for how we do our procurements that are in compliance with the laws of the Commonwealth. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Zuniga to lead the conversation on what you think we ought to be doing on this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have submitted a memorandum to the commissioners here relative to the procurement of services. As we engage this startup phase, but we'll continue to operate, procure and buy, issue purchase orders, equipment, supplies, but also importantly the services of professional services and professional providers. And I've done research in our statute and have concluded that Section 3W of our enabling statute does exempt us, this commission, from having to comply with the public procurement rules of state agencies. We also, given my familiarity with Chapter 30B, we also, according to my research, do not believe that those rules would apply to this commission. But in my memorandum here, I have submitted to these commissioners my recommendation to nonetheless adopt those procedures that the Executive Office of Administration and Finance issues for agencies, for state agencies. Those are regulations 801 CMR 21. They govern essentially the procurement rules and procedures, the tasks that state procurement agents should follow for the solicitation and procurement and engagement of those professional services. So again, because although the law does not require us to adopt those, I'm submitting that it's in the best interest of these of the taxpayers to follow them, because embedded in those procedures there are a number of best practices that ensure the proper and efficient use of the public resources, as well as create a very fair and competitive environment. Again, what I'm talking about, I'm posing to you, is that that we consider the adoption of those rules, 801 CMR, and I can take any questions or have any discussion.
Any discussion about the topic besides this?
Mr. Chairman, I think that although it's clear that these rules do not apply to us by statute or by their own force, they are the rules that other entities in the Commonwealth live by. They're rules that have been carefully thought through. There is not only a set of rules that have been carefully thought through, but a set of practices that have grown up around those rules. And so it provides a framework for us within which we can work without having to reinvent something that probably wouldn't be as good no matter how long we spend doing it. And it also is appropriate that we have rules that everybody understands for our major procurement. So I strongly support this motion.
Mr. Chair, I need to just two following points on that notion. The Office of the Governor, and we'll talk about these as per the agenda, but the Office of the Governor has already started the procurement of two service providers, a gaming consultant and an outside counsel, under those rules. And according to that RFR, those two RFRs, after the forming of the commission, the selection would come to the commission. So there's another great segue into the adoption of those rules. I also, just as per my memorandum here, would like to clarify that this is for the procurement of and purchasing of services and commodities for our operations. This does not apply to the procurement of licensees or anything like that. Indeed, our own chapter enabling statute gives us a lot of direction and a lot of discretion into how we undertake that procurement or those procurements.
Thank you. That's a good point for the public to understand. We're talking about the procurement of goods and services for the use of the commission. We're not yet getting into how we procure the gaming licenses and the resources associated with that. Thank you. That's a good point. Any other points? In general, I mean, you can't not favor this, I think. And in general, we're not going to be in a mode where we're in an urgent situation. We are, however, as we start up, a little bit in an urgent situation. Is there any, I mean, we sometimes we need people desperately, we need consultant help desperately, we need, and so forth. Is there any flexibility in these rules to help us move expeditiously when the need is there?
For the most part, my understanding is that yes, there are thresholds that, for example, the Office of Administration and Finance has set forth in policy, not in regulation, relative to incidental purchases, for example. Anything under $5,000, we, the policy statement states that an agency could just use best business practices, not necessarily have to get a minimum of 3 bids. That's
for under 5,000.
Under 5,000.
Right.
As outlined in my memo, I also moved that we adopt that policy of incidental purchases could be very well done using best practices. Over that, there's other thresholds that apply, and we do have the flexibility by having chosen to adopt these rules if an emergency arises to temporarily pause them or suspend them, if you will, or whatever may show up.
I think the commission has been in place now for 12 days. 3 of us have been here for 12 days. The other 2 have been here for 7 days. But in that time, and in the month prior to that, where we just had some consultant staff who were helping, we have done a lot, and I'll speak to this later on. A lot of state agencies have helped us to get moving. But I do think that even as we adopt this, which I think is the right thing to do, we do need to make sure that we know what the appropriate processes are, and there are some, for the speedy execution of things that really need to move quickly. And so just as an aside, and we will, I think, continue to look to you for help and guidance in this area. So if you can help make sure that we know every appropriate shortcut that there is, just in case. This is the former businessman in me speaking.
I will call them flexibility. There's enough rule there's enough flexibility in the rules that would allow us to do that.
That's great. Do I hear a motion to move forward on this proposal?
Yeah, I would submit to you that, as per my memo and description, that you please consider this a motion to adopt the rules 801 CMR 21 as articulated in the memorandum.
Okay, is that sufficient for the motion to adopt whatever that number was you said?
I could read. I'm recommending and move to adopt 801 CMR 21 and follow associated procurement procedures when necessary and conduct the procurement of commodities and services accordingly.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second the motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion as read by Commissioner Zuniga, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hear none. Motion passes. Thank you very much for that work. Under the next item, item 6 on the agenda, we need to do a little bit of work in just adapting and adopting those steps which we've already taken as we were in our consummating mode. And the first issue is the lease for our office space. We're at 84 State Street. As the commissioners know, we don't have any idea how many personnel we will eventually have when the commission gets up and running. The numbers are anywhere from 100 to 150, probably somewhere in that range, but in different offices around the state. So we couldn't get a space, and we won't need that space for another couple of years probably. So we decided to get space for a 1-year lease that will hold us for up to 30 people, and by the end of this year, we will be able to make an informed decision about how much more space we'll need, either in this building or someplace else. And as I think the commissioners know, this was the lease was negotiated and by DCAM, our Department of whatever it's called, Capital Asset Management. Thank you. And I did sign the lease. The lease is, as I said, for 1 year. It'll hold about 30 people. It's for $256,000 for the year, plus utilities, which, if I'm right, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000. I have signed it tentatively, but I do think it needs to be adopted by a formal vote of the commission. Could I have a motion to that effect?
I move that we adopt and ratify the lease that the chairman signed for the space at 84 State Street.
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
Just
no negotiating on who gets which office.
No, just to note that I will vote in favor of this, but to note that at $33 per square foot for a 1-year lease that allows us the flexibility to renew as early as 6 months, start negotiations, is very reasonable. It's the going rate of downtown space. So just wanted to make that note.
Thank you. That's good to hear. And we, because we only took a 1-year lease, we had less negotiating space, but I think DCAM did a good job. So thank you for that. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion as stated by Commissioner McHugh, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Under this same item, we have done a bunch of other things. We've bought office furniture, we've signed up for phones, we bought some computers. For the most part, this has been handled by other state agencies who know how to do this. And just for the record, as we've been trying to pull this commission together, as I said, when we started, we had 0. And we hired the governor's office on our behalf, hired a public relations consultant who many of you have met, Karen Schwartzman, and Janice Riley, who was a consultant to help us get up and rolling. Janice served as my chief of staff when I was Secretary of Administration and Finance, and she is still just a consultant. But Janice, in particular, worked with the state agencies that work under A&F, ITD, the IT department, HRD, Human Relations, OSD, the Office of, what's it called? OSD.
Operational Services Division. Operational
Services Division, which is the procurement body, and the Comptroller's Office. And I want to say for the record that they've all been great, and we would not have been able to operate if those folks hadn't put their shoulder to the wheel. And the answer to can state government move quickly is yes. And I want to thank those folks if they're watching or they're out there somewhere. But the question I want to ask, Commissioner, is whether you think, do we need to do anything else? Is it all pretty much under control? Do we need anything to sort of ratify everything we've done, or is it all right as is?
I move and suggest to approve the expenditures as we have them and know of them right now.
Okay.
And given that we just adopted the procurement rules a few minutes ago, then operate under those assumptions. Purely cleaning house clean. housekeeping item, if you will, but
So
a good
that
one.
would require another
Yeah,
motion?
it would require another motion. I have actually spoken with Janice and have can speak a little bit about the expenditures, just to summarize them for the
Good.
record.
Yeah, great. Do we have that?
Yeah, we have that in the packets. We have a total of
Oh, yeah.
$66,000 on what I would term fixed assets. These will eventually go into our fixed asset ledger. It's chairs, equipment, desks, et cetera. So they're itemized here for your consideration. So this has been a purchase.
Okay, great.
There's a couple of other items which we are leasing and are customarily leased, and I find them to be reasonable as well. Copier, computer, monitors, laptops that get us started as well. Given the nature and depreciation of these assets, it's very advisable in these days to lease that equipment. The yearly costs amount to $5,380 currently for computers, $3,000 for a copier, and those are the expenditures that we have. And third and last, we have an item of chargebacks for our connectivity, emails, voicemail, et cetera, to be part of the mass mail system. Those are also itemized here for your consideration and are $1,300 a month. So,
Okay, great. I will say that we're, for reasons which you can all understand, the public can understand, we are paying particular attention to various elements of security. We won't have just the normal voicemail systems, just the normal email systems, and so forth, since typically gaming commissions are under a much stricter standard of security. We haven't done a lot on this yet, but it's something that we need to continue to be focused on, and we'll look to your help in overseeing that as well, along with our former state trooper. Any other discussion on, do you want to put this in the form of a motion?
I move that this commission approve the costs summarized as in the attachment, $66,696 for fixed assets. They're in the spreadsheet. And the other leasing costs, also itemized in the packet, as well as the chargeback costs to be approved by this commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Other than thank you for looking at this stuff. All in favor of adopting the motion as read by Commissioner Zuniga, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Again, the motion passes unanimously. We are now on item 7, which begins to get to the more substantive and critically important part of our work, which is the discussion of and perhaps selection of a gaming consultant. A couple of introductory remarks here. We have asked, there are 2 finalists, Michael and Carol in Spectrum Gaming. We have asked both of them to come and make a presentation. We'll tell you a little bit more about this in a minute. We'll discuss this process a little bit more. We have asked that all of them be willing to step outside, if you are willing, while we're having this entire segment, and we will ask each of the groups to come in at the right time to have the discussion. In addition, Commissioner Cameron wants to make a statement about this item.
Mr. Chair, as it turns out, the 2 finalists for the gaming consultant are both New Jersey-based companies. As my fellow commissioners know, I spent my entire professional career with the New Jersey State Police, and I know some of the individuals of teams, and I know all of them by reputation. I thought it was appropriate, so there's no appearance of a conflict, that I recuse myself from this selection process. So I'm going to leave the room at this time and let this piece of the process proceed.
Commissioner Cameron brought this up herself. She has not been involved in any of the discussions, preliminary or otherwise. I would like to say for the record that there is a standard by which we will be using for issues of recusal, a two-step standard that each of the commissioners will need to answer. The first question is, given this apparent conflict, can I be objective? And I believe Commissioner Cameron believed that she could be. But the second question is there any appearance of a conflict, notwithstanding the fact that I can be objective? And to that, Commissioner Cameron was gracious and wise enough to say, in the interests of the appearance of absolutely propriety, she would recuse herself and has throughout this entire process. So if the folks from Spectrum and Michael and Carol would be willing to go out back, Janice Riley with the pretty much red hair will show you where to go. And I appreciate you folks coming and indulging us on this. Okay, here is the process. We're going to get a little bit of background on how we got to where we got. Some of you know this. And then we're going to have each of them come in, and then we will talk for as long as we need to talk about this decision. By way of background, the RFP for the gaming consultant was issued on November 29th. It was issued by the governor under the authority that's invested in the governor along with money to help get the commission up and running before the commission existed. And we asked them, in order that we could have an RFP teed up, ready to go by the time we started, rather than have the commission have to put out an RFP so we'd lose a month or a month and a half. We wanted the governor to get this set up for us. We did collaborate with them on the writing of the RFP. That went out on February 29th. The scope of services included such things as reviewing the Act and advising us on its content, assisting us with all of the activities to implement the Act, in particular to develop a strategic plan for the commission, particularly in its startup phase, that would include timelines, staffing plans, preliminary budget, et cetera, assist with other procurement activities related to the licensing process, and so forth. The deadline for the proposals was March 21st. The response that was required from the firm was a history from the proposers was a history of the firm, a description of their relevant experience, similar projects, references, conflicts that they may have in the Massachusetts gaming environment, etc. The responses that came in, I believe there were 5 by March 21st. They were reviewed in the first instance by the review team designated by the governor's office, which consisted of me and someone from the Office of Consumer Affairs and Public Licensing, Adam Fortner. We winnowed the applications down to the 2 finalists, and for the 2 finalists to interview and then call in for an interview, the 2 finalists, Adam and I, given that Commissioner Cameron was recused, and this was the week when we still only had 3 commissioners, I asked Commissioner McHugh to join us and Adam for that process of review. And Commissioner McHugh will report on that process and our reactions to the interviews after we've had the interviews. So I think I want to turn to the candidates, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we chose the order of interview surprise by alphabet, and the team of Michael and Carol will be our first interviewees. If you'd bring them in, Janice. We have 2 mics and 2 chairs, but please bring up other chairs. That was... That's good. That counts for a lot. Why don't you introduce yourselves, and as last time, we've asked you to make a brief presentation of what you think is important, and we will then fire away. So, gentlemen.
Thank you. Chairman Crosby and Commission, thank you very much for this opportunity. This is a very important day, historic day in the history of the Commonwealth. We have submitted a written proposal to you, which we trust contains the basic background information and our experience over the decades we've been involved in gaming, and particularly in gaming regulation. What I'd like to do now, if I could, is just introduce myself and my colleagues, and we'll also note there is one person missing, which we'll explain in a minute. To my right is Mr. Guy Michael. He's part of my firm. It's Michael N. Carroll. And Guy is a practitioner for almost 37 years, I guess now? Something like that. Who's counting? Guy is regarded in the gaming industry as one of the seniors, the deans of gaming. He was involved in New Jersey in the initial drafting of the Casino Control Act back in the 70s. He stayed on to head important departments in the Division of Gaming Enforcement. He was involved in the initial licensing of the New Jersey casinos, the setting up of that regulatory apparatus, and obviously the results over the many years that have shown that those initial apparatus were very effective in keeping out undesirable elements. He was also involved in establishing gaming in Australia. We were involved in the drafting of legislation for the Pennsylvania Gaming Project. Guy is also a past international president of the International Association of Gaming Attorneys. He currently serves as a counselor to that organization. And more importantly, or relevant to our presentation today, our firm has been involved since the very beginning of the advent of what is now a $26 billion Indian gaming industry throughout the country. We were involved in the initial setting up of Foxwoods, the gaming commission there, the Pequot Gaming Commission, that is. We were also involved in developing systems and methodologies that were used as a pattern and as a model for all around the country in terms of other Indian gaming operations that have been set up. And Guy and I also have held regulatory positions and still hold such positions today for over almost 2 decades now. I've been chairman of a gaming commission in Louisiana, and Mr. Michael has been legal counsel. From that experience, Guy is regarded as not only an expert, but as a person who was called upon by many of the largest gaming organizations in the world for advice and for consultation. I've been very proud to work with him now for 20 years, and he has taught me a great deal, and I find that every day he comes up with new, innovative ways and methods to better gaming regulation throughout this country. To Guy's right, Mr. Jim Darcy and Mr. Bernie Murphy. Both of these individuals are veteran FBI supervisors who have a very unique skill set. Both were involved in New Jersey in conducting complex investigations of public corruption, organized crime, and other matters, and most specifically matters involving corruption related to gaming. Both were intimately involved in the various attempts by organized crime to get into Atlantic City, and through their efforts, those invasion attempts were in fact rebutted. In addition to that, after their careers with the FBI, they were retained and by some of the largest gaming companies in the world for both advice on compliance, regulatory systems, as well as general advice to managers on how to do it right and make sure that their systems would remain clean and in complete compliance with regulatory guidelines. There's one person missing from our table right now, and that is our other colleague, Kathleen O'Toole. Kathleen is well known in Massachusetts. She is the former commissioner of the Boston Police Department, She was also the former superintendent of the superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, and she was also a lieutenant colonel of the Special Operations for the Massachusetts State Police. Kathy, in addition to that, has had very responsible positions over the years, including a very important position as she was Secretary of Public Safety. She supervised 20 different state agencies with over 10,000 employees, and she brought not only integrity but organization to that effort. She has also been involved in many high-profile projects. She has been consulted for the United States Department of Justice, a Civil Rights Division, on police profiling and other racial-related matters. She currently is a member of the Independent Commission on Policing in Northern Ireland, which is known as the Patton Commission, and she's been involved in teaching proper police procedure and governmental administration to the Irish government. All of that being said, we're here today because this is a very special team that we've assembled. All of us have been involved on many occasions with starting up gaming commissions from zero. I mean, literally like you are. No desks, no pens, no telephones, nothing whatsoever to start. We've been there. We've done it. We think our record speaks for itself. We have a documented history of both integrity and also transparency. And the clients that we have advised over the years, both in the industry and governmentally, have always been very satisfied with our work product and have advised us, and I believe we contain some letters of recommendation as you had requested. We've studied your gaming law, and we've analyzed it from the perspective of our experience, and we believe that there are many good things in that legislation that other jurisdictions have not included. You are evolutionary. You have included in there matters that we think are not only important, but will be critical in maintaining the integrity of your process. We applaud that. It makes everyone's job easier going forward. In addition to that, we wanted to point out that the persons you see here with Kathleen O'Toole are the persons you would be dealing with if you select us. We don't delegate. We don't have a pool of people that are going to be given different responsibilities to interact with. We believe in running our practice in a way that we devote our attention and our focus on the matters of most importance. This is most important. We also had supplied you recently with a couple of handout charts. We thought just to give you a little sampling of our thinking in looking at your statute. There is one that has to do with an interagency relationship chart. It has, I apologize for the multicolors, but that was my daughter's work, and she did a pretty good job. So, the document we think is self-explanatory, but Mr. Michael will comment a little more about the detail of it, but we thought it was just a visual on both our experience and how these agencies can interact and the importance of that interaction. Secondly, we gave you a chart, also what I would call the regulatory review process, which was just a sample of our thinking in terms of perhaps how a review protocol could go, utilizing some techniques and methods that have proven to be very successful in maximizing integrity, transparency, and yet allow for maintaining the balance that you spoke about before, Chairman, of allowing the industry to breathe and be able to expand and put the capital investment in and not be choked by unnecessary or overzealous regulations. That review protocol is a sample. It's by no means a final submission, but we wanted you to get the benefit of that thinking. I'll turn it over to Mr. Michael now. Oh, I forgot one person. I should tell you about myself. I'm Robert J. Carroll. I was also involved as a state prosecutor for the first half of my career. I've been an attorney for over 3 decades. I formerly headed the New Jersey Organized Crime and Racketeering Task Force for many years in the Division of Criminal Justice. During that phase, we also cracked down on a lot of illegal slot machines and things of this sort. I learned a great deal about gaming in those early years. After coming out of government, I was recruited by Mr. Michael, and at that point, his partner, Mickey Brown, who was the first CEO of Foxwoods, and we worked together at the beginning of the Indian gaming movement. Since then, we have counseled dozens and dozens of tribes, hundreds of state, federal, and tribal officials on processes of good gaming. We believe we have an excellent record on providing governments with the input and the models and the tools that you can choose from that will best work and serve the Commonwealth. So, Mr. Michael?
Thank you, Bob, and I'll echo Bob's comments, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, in thanking you for this opportunity to be able to present ourselves to you and hopefully be able to present a compelling case for our retention. I'm Guy Michael. Bob has explained to you my background, and he did it precisely the way I wrote it, and so I appreciate that. But the purpose of my presentation, and we'll try to keep it as short as possible, is not to repeat the concepts that Bob has so adequately explained in terms of our ideas and our projections on how we intend to go about this job, but maybe get more involved in some of the details, not to be picayune, but as everyone knows, in any of these activities, the devil is in the details. And there are some aspects of the startup process here, the administrative and the procedural processes, that really need to be addressed very quickly, as I'm sure you all recognize. And what we wanted to do is point out some of those and as an introduction into the kinds of things that we would be happy to and be able to assist you with. The chairman earlier mentioned in terms of the agenda items that you've already done that they were simply organizational. I'm sure you didn't mean it that way, because there's nothing simple about the organizational issues that you're going to be facing here. So to begin those, for example, the statute provides for a variety of law enforcement agencies to be involved in the casino regulation procedures, and that's as it should be. The coordination and the compilation of resources in the law enforcement field is essential. However, what is also essential is to make sure that the areas of jurisdiction as between those various agencies are clearly defined and are well understood. We've been involved in jurisdictions in the past in which there is ambiguity as between what agency handles what matters, and as a result, it is counterproductive. It ends up with no one handling it completely and no one handling it well. So we would recommend at the outset that efforts be made for memoranda of understanding to be drafted and engaged in with, for example, the Attorney General's Office Division of Gaming Enforcement, the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission Gaming Liquor Enforcement Unit, and the State Police Gaming Enforcement Unit. Those are all agencies that have some overlap jurisdiction, and it should be clear as to who does what. Besides that exterior coordination with other agencies, you're of course going to need staff and coordination among yourselves. And that goes without saying. But in doing that, you're going to have to know, of course, what the staff is intending to do. And we've taken the liberty of drafting initially, at least, a listing of what might be your internal units in terms of how the commission might choose to operate. There could be, for example, a licensing unit and commission intake clerk to handle all of the applications that you're going to receive. The mounds of paper, both actual paper and electronic information, are going to be massive. Not to forget, there's a vendor approval process and your requirement to maintain records of every vendor at every casino. That unit will need, that documentation needs to be well handled. There need to be a hearings unit to handle the appeals and the various hearings on licenses that you will face. We'd recommend an audit unit to handle the required oversight of casino financial operations. The statute also requires you to be on site on the casino floor. Actually, it says that casinos cannot operate unless the commission has representatives on the floor. So you would need an inspector's unit to operate and to administer those on-site observers. You're also tasked with handling any variety, I lost count, I think, going through the statute, of funds that are generated from the casino revenue. So it might be a good idea to have a fund administration unit. That would be the ones who would handle, possibly under the treasurer of the commission, the administration of those funds. You're also tasked with reporting and to the legislature and the remainder of the government the developments in the casino industry. And so a research unit that would keep track of the industry and know what the new developments are so that you can prepare those reports on an adequate basis. Obviously, being lawyers, I guess we're a little partial to the legal unit that would need to be a part of your organization, a general counsel, and lawyers who will be able to interpret and administer the act. An administration unit that would handle the overall operations of the commission administratively, and potentially a racing unit. There is that entire area of gaming that is not typically within casino regulatory bodies, but which the legislature has vested in you to handle racing as well. So you would need that too. That would just be, again, our 10,000-mile overview of what might be worthwhile commission structure. We've also, in the review of the Act, noticed that there is what we read as potentially a two-step process as an option that this commission may use in terms of licensing. That initial applications be filed, including certainly background information and representations about the remainder of the obligations that applicants will have, that background be reviewed by the Bureau, and then once the Bureau passes on the background, the remainder of the application be forwarded to the Commission. If the Bureau does not pass on the background, it just doesn't go any further. We think that kind of two-step process is very wise because it avoids the unnecessary time and expense of having what might be later determined to be unqualified applicants go through all of the election processes and so on that ultimately turn out to be nullity. Or also not having what might potentially be determined to be unsavory persons involved in that election process at all. The Act also was kind of unique in that although it makes a license a revocable privilege, as do almost all the acts that we've seen, it also allows licenses to be transferable. And this is something that we haven't often seen. And we think we need to address the due process implications, possibly council could do that, of having a legislative outline that vests some property right in the license as opposed to it being just the revocable privilege. The kinds of process that may be required to remove that vested interest could be different than if there were no transferability of the license itself. The issues surrounding tribal gaming, as Bob has mentioned, we are very experienced in, and although the Commission is not directly involved in that process, it does have a role, and it's important that the Commission be fully advised of and capable of addressing the issues that arise from that. There are two in particular that are particularly acute in Indian country right now. The implications of what's called the Carcieri decision, which says that tribes cannot take land into trust if they were recognized after 1932, and what's called the Patchak case, which is now before the Supreme Court as to whether or not an individual landowner can sue in federal court to stop an Indian development if, in fact, the Indian tribe that is engaged in development took the land into trust after 1932 in violation of Carcieri. So these are involved issues, but they're important, and they could determine the Indian aspects of the gaming operations here. In terms of immediate administrative issues that we saw in the Act that really should be part of your code of ethics that the legislature says needs to be done and should be, and your policies and procedures, there are some language uses in the Act that we think need to be massaged a little bit, not legislatively, but that the Commission has the authority to, under Section 4, you have the power to effectuate the provisions of the Act according to the purposes of that Act. For example, Section 3I says that no funds can be transferred without Commission approval. Now, obviously, you've started to work on that today, which is very wise, and we applaud you for that. You would certainly not want to have the Commission's approval on every check that you need to write and every expenditure that you need to make. Section 3K says that the hiring of employees, you cannot hire them if they're convicted of a misdemeanor of more than 10 years prior to their application. We're kind of certain that that might be a misstatement. It's probably that you can hire them if their misdemeanor conviction was less than 10 years prior to their application. But these are things that you could probably address in your policies and procedures. Section 3M talks about hiring anyone who has an interest in a licensee within 3 years before employment. Well, you're going to be hiring people now. There are no licensees. So it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to ascertain if people that you hire have had an interest in a licensee 3 years ago. They're not going to know that. You're not going to know that. These are issues that need to be addressed in the policies and procedures, and we think you can under your powers on Section 4. No commissioner or employee can own stock in a licensee. Now, that's a very legitimate and very worthwhile rule. However, licensee covers a variety of people, and it's not uncommon for people to have stock in mutual funds in which, for example, they may not even know what stock they hold, and especially if it's a vendor such as IBM or AT&T and so on. So that would need to be interpreted, and codes of ethics and procedures need to be implemented that would address those practical concerns. And finally, the applications are considered public records except for what the Act calls secrets and competitively sensitive or proprietary information, which typically means commercial information. But it would also be worthwhile if the Commission promulgated rules that would allow for the confidentiality of individual personal background information. We don't, of course, you want to be transparent in your operations so that the public knows that you're doing this job adequately and accurately. But at the same time, you don't want to deter applicants from applying because they're afraid that their entire life history is going to be available to anyone who wants to see it. Again, those are illustrative. They're not meant to be inclusive. We don't want to take up all day. And we hope that it gives you an example of the kinds of things that we'd be able to identify and help you with as we proceed through this challenging process. I'd now turn it over to Mr. Murphy and Mr. Darcy.
Well, I won't take too much of your time except to say that Jim and I have worked together for now going on 30 years. Both of our backgrounds are FBI, and then working in the compliance end of the casino business after our retirement from the Bureau. I'm going to kind of turn it to Jim to talk more specifically to some of those issues, because while all of our work as agents and in the commercial field have been casino related, Jim's background does go back just a little before mine in Atlantic City, and like everything, I think we should start at the beginning. So I think that I'll turn it over to Jim for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm the local guy. I was born in Boston, and to let you know how old I am, I went to BC High before any of this was here, so this spectacular building. I went on to BC and then eventually ended up in the FBI, where I spent 17 years in Atlantic City. I was an agent there for 10 years and then a supervisor, I guess, for the last 7. And after that, went into the casino business on the compliance side. One of the things that I think we could be helpful to the Commission through this consultancy goes to the issue of what the legislation charges the Commission with coordinating with law enforcement agencies at every level, to include the federal government, which is tremendous. One of the things that occurred in the 1990s, when there was a significant uptick in the number of jurisdictions that came online, is that the FBI and New Jersey State Police and folks from Nevada, from both the FBI and the Nevada Gaming Control Board, traveled around the country and put on seminars for the various jurisdictions: Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Indiana. I spent some time in Michigan with an assistant attorney general from New Jersey, and other places. And the purpose of these seminars, which were attended by U.S. attorneys, Attorney General's office folks, local police, and local prosecutors, was to try and educate or give these participants some background on the lessons learned. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of folks in law enforcement back then, and I think maybe to this day, think that the movie Casino is what's going on with the industry, and clearly it isn't. The Nevada for sure had a significant issue in what we referred to as the straw man cases in the 1970s. New Jersey's statutes and regulatory backdrop was set up to prevent that from happening ever again, and it's done a tremendous job. And Nevada cured their problems, coupled with the fact that in the late 70s they required every licensee to have a compliance program where they self-regulate themselves to the extent they operate outside of the state of Nevada. And the fact that most of the players in the industry from the late 90s to the present are either publicly traded corporations or privately held corporations, who would, because of their debt, are almost the equivalent to publicly traded corporations in terms of transparency. Now, when I speak of the lessons learned, what we thought was important was to what our experience was in Nevada and New Jersey was whatever the local crime problem is really what you have to pay attention to. And New Jersey was a great example, a very, very robust and successful regulatory system. But the very first thing that happened there was a Casino Control Commission was indicted for taking a bribe. He passed away before trial. The mob knew that they weren't going to be able to infiltrate casinos as they did in the 70s in Vegas. There's been testimony in federal court to that extent. So what they did in Atlantic City is they developed a plan to control the office of the mayor, and they were successful. They paid for his campaign. In controlling the mayor's office, they controlled the zoning and planning, which was where they tried to make money. Now, luckily, law enforcement was on top of that. The mayor got indicted. The underboss of the Philadelphia family got indicted. The mayor was sentenced to 15 years and served 7. So that's an example. The other thing they did is they attempted to exert influence over the industry by their control of the largest union in Atlantic City, the bartenders and restaurant workers. Now, that was a long time ago, I grant you that, but our point is, and we think we can be of assistance in providing guidance, putting together seminars, and to help everybody keep their eye on the ball. We all know the issue with corruption is unfortunately across the United States is there, and I guess we wouldn't be surprised if something happens along the way. But you've got a strong legislation, which we've seen, and you've got all the right pieces in place, and we think we can contribute a lot to help expedite the process and bring to the table experience on issues of grave importance, obviously. And just finally, towards that end, the law enforcement business is a team sport. Now, it doesn't always work as smoothly as it should, but so what? That doesn't mean it can't.
Heard about that in Boston.
Yes, sir. I'm familiar. But the legislation charges the commission with reaching out, and we think we could be helpful in that regard. As far as the industry goes, my experience in the compliance end of it, the history of it is in Nevada, as I said earlier, in the late 70s, they required all their licensees to have a compliance program in place. Basically, it's an internal review system where they monitor everything they do, and they do it because they have to. We worked, the group here has worked in many jurisdictions. I can name 7 off the top. We had casinos in Canada, Australia. We did new development work in Macau. We had a casino in South America and one in South Africa. So we're very well experienced towards that end. We would internally do about 10 to 12,000 backgrounds a year. We're a 50,000 employee company. And of that number, 200 to 300 were key employees. So we're very familiar with how to get the backgrounds done, how to get them done quickly, and what the various regulators from the various jurisdictions would expect. And I think that's pretty much what I have at this point, sir. Thank you.
So if you have questions, we're more than happy to answer any of your concerns.
Great. Thank you very much. Why don't Commissioner Zuniga and Commissioner Stebbins lead off?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions, or in general, I thought, or I saw the way that the legislation was written and is envisioned to take place. I envision this process as two mega processes, if you will. There's a big upfront siting, location, real estate development piece that will take place. And there's once casinos are eventually built, one later on of eventually operation of the casinos. I think you touched on a lot of great illustrations relative to the operation, the ongoing, the licensing, etc. But is there anything that you could tell us relative to the upfront process, if you will, of construction and development piece that you could speak to?
I'll start on that. We agree with you. I think you've identified, I think, the two main areas. There's the initial developmental, if you want to call it that, and then later the operational. As part of that developmental aspect, though, we perceive the background investigation and the qualification of those who are developing to be an integral piece of that process. It would be, as I said earlier, counterproductive and time-consuming and delaying to allow an applicant to go through the development, to oversee their construction, to make sure that they have everything in place, their election, their approvals, and then find out that they can't get a license. So our recommendation is that the background procedure be done initially as an applicants with an intention to proceed with a project first be screened, vetted, and that their qualifications be determined. Once that's done, then the remainder of the process can take place. Now, if those applicants choose to proceed with development and purchase as much as they want to develop in the meantime, if they're confident that they're going to succeed in the vetting process, that's their risk. If they want to wait, they can wait. From what we gather from public reports, it seems that most of the persons who have expressed an interest in Massachusetts are well established, well qualified in many jurisdictions, types of companies. In that case, a background investigation may not take very long, or if it does, at least those companies might have a more confident willingness to be able to proceed with the developmental aspects while they're going through the background parts. But our basic recommendation in that area is that the screening is at the first stage the priority.
Commissioner, anything else? Okay.
I have a quick question, and you pointed to your history and experience with startup legislation. I feel Massachusetts is somewhat unique. I mean, we've identified a capped number of casinos. Do you see us mirroring another jurisdiction where you had some involvement that had a similar legislation, similar startup to the Commonwealth?
Yeah, we view Massachusetts as I said before, evolutionary. Your act contains some of the best developed provisions from legislation from different states and jurisdictions. Refinement of that would occur in your regulation process and your implementation process. I don't think there's any one state that it would mirror. Obviously, you know, in the early days, and Guy would speak better to this about New Jersey, you know, there was a drawing upon of Las Vegas, but there was a different intent. They wanted to start at a higher level to screen out the bad elements from just coming to the East Coast. That experience over the years itself was refined. In fact, just recently, New Jersey went through a major reorganization of its regulatory system, all for the good. I would say that Massachusetts, from our perspective right now, has a very good starting point. And some of those fine-tuning that guys talked about, and that was only illustrative. There are other areas. But within your purview and within your authority, you'll be able to address those. We could certainly provide to you examples of other jurisdictions in those same areas, both positive and in some cases very positive and on occasion negative. I would think that you should design it. You have a core element that is, let's say, within industry standard, but there will be a certain Commonwealth direction for this that's going to be unique here. We were impressed with the inclusion of the law enforcement agencies. For example, Pennsylvania didn't do that. They went a little different direction, which was problematic. That particular observation was made early and was corrected. That's going to enable you, I think, to move more quickly and do those type of things. So that would, I would say, I would view yours as a quality starting point, and the fine-tuning is where it gets interesting now.
If I could just add to that briefly, Bob pointed to it. If you're asking for a jurisdiction that has a similar kind of process, Pennsylvania is one of them, in the sense that whereas New Jersey or Nevada or Mississippi, anyone who wants to have a casino can apply for a license, and if they qualify, they build a casino. Here in Massachusetts, as in Pennsylvania, the legislation specifies certain areas and limits the number of licenses to those areas. So you're, in that sense, you're consistent with the Pennsylvania process. And we were involved in the drafting of Pennsylvania legislation. The legislation is fine, has everything it needs. As is no secret, the administration of that legislation at the outset of the Pennsylvania process had some difficulty. But it was not a flaw in the law. It was different.
Leaving the state police out was not flawed in the law?
Well, leaving the state police should have had more of a role. Yeah, there's no question about that. But the state police could have, just because the state police wasn't legislatively authorized to do it doesn't mean there couldn't have been any cooperation as between the state police and the gaming board. And there was an administrative failure to communicate, even if it wasn't a required communication. Information that the state police, for example, might have developed, might have been shared, and we're not sure that was done. But we think that if properly administered, certainly there's no necessary consequence of having this kinds of process where you have only limited licenses in limited places that would have to repeat that Pennsylvania process.
Did you approve of the structure of the commission itself? The appointees of the structure of the Pennsylvania Commission itself?
Candidly, no. We were involved.
But you said it was. I thought you said it was a good.
It was a good statute. We would have preferred certain things that would have been done differently. I mean, we would have preferred, for example, that there may have been different, like you say, the state police part. There might have been different standards placed in. Overall, there was no. We weren't. Yeah, there might have been more transparency, as Bob says, but. No system is perfect, and it was not the law itself, it was the administration of it.
Thank you.
I have another question. Excuse me. Just can one of you tell us your view of the gaming and hospitality industry, just sort of like a summary? You alluded to it a little bit relative to how it has evolved from Nevada and New Jersey, but where do you see that the industry going, its sustainability? Do you see consolidation? What can you tell us relative to the general?
Again, it's no secret that it's different now. The competition that exists with so many different jurisdictions online, I don't mean online is another problem, but so many jurisdictions in place that have casinos and have gaming, there's so much competition as between the various entities that when I first got involved in it in the 70s, for example, we were first involved, it was, build it and they will come. I remember the initial days of Resorts International, which was the first and for a year and a half the only casino in Atlantic City. They literally It didn't have 24 hours at the time. It opened at 10 o'clock. And they would literally blow a bugle at 10 o'clock while the crowd was winding its way around the exterior of the building and on the boardwalk. And then the crowd would just crush into the operation. And you couldn't find a place to stand. People were actually selling their seats if they were sitting at a blackjack table. People would bid on the seat, I'll pay you to be able to sit there, and they'd make more money selling their seat than playing the game. Those days are gone, and so the ability to manage and administer your casino and to market it is much more important now than it ever was before. The quality of management, the quality of marketing, as I say, are all elements that are as key and more key now. We just focused in the beginning on integrity, and there's no reason not to focus on that now, but for the most part, the people who are involved in the industry have been in the industry for a long time. They understand regulation, they know the business, and if you get people with that kind of an experience in the business, then you have a chance of success. But the days of certainty in the business are gone.
Sir, I might add, in Atlantic City, for sure, it wasn't a casino problem. Atlantic City had a corruption problem long before the casinos got there, and they had a mob problem going back a long time. The issue was a lot of investment right now and opportunists trying to take advantage of that. So you could have built a theme park at $2 billion. Criminals do what they do.
Commissioner McHugh?
I have no questions.
This is a tough business that you folks are in and that we're getting into with a lot of issues. Is there anything in your backgrounds, professional backgrounds, any difficulties that you've had that where you appeared to get in trouble or might have gotten in trouble, or anything that we should know about?
I think I speak for everyone, and also Ms. O'Toole, I would say absolutely not.
Okay.
Unless that beer I had in high school is still haunting me. Other than that, no, sir.
We're tough on beers.
Okay.
We will, for the record, be doing further background checking of all the various people that we select. So everything that we do here will be conditional on getting people, the appropriate level of backgrounds. Second question is whether you have any ethnic or racial diversity in your team anywhere.
Well, Kathleen O'Toole obviously is organized as a WBE, and at that point, we had submitted that as part of our team. We certainly historically have always demonstrated a strong sensitivity towards both racial and ethnic. The casino, for example, that Guy and I now regulate in Louisiana, it has been a model for racial and ethnic diversity. Our past clientele alone would exhibit that. This particular team that's been put together has been assembled because of the individual skill sets that we bring. There was absolutely no concerns about anything other than the ability they bring, their reputations, and their skills. We did not in any way expand beyond what we felt was needed to bring to this, but if that is necessary at some point, we certainly are open to that.
Well, it is an area, as you know, that the law is very clear on the importance of diversity of the workforce, diversity of the supplier relationships, and it's something that we in the Commission are going to be caring about too, amongst ourselves and amongst our providers. So it is something I hope you'll be sensitive to.
We acknowledge and are sensitive, absolutely.
My last question is, and we talked about this a little bit when we met before, your team is very, very strong from a law enforcement and compliance standpoint. It's very impressive from that standpoint and from the lawyering side. What concerns me slightly is where are the kind of senior management resources who can help? We're sitting here trying to figure out how we get up and running, how we get a commission. We're not yet worried about, overlooking the licenses and applications of people. The RFP calls for things like proposed timeline and identification of priorities, staffing plans, preliminary budget. You don't talk about that much. Where does that reside in your team, and how will you attack that, the strategic plan, which is really at the heart of the RFP?
We carry that expertise as well. We have, as we said in our backgrounds, for example, I was the 4th employee of the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement, and for the next 6 years we struggled from precisely the same situation you are in to, as I say, 6 years later being and sooner than that, a fully operational regulatory agency. As Deputy Director, I was intimately involved in the construction of that organization. From the hiring to the administration of it to the policies and procedures, timelines for licensing, was all part of that job. Bob and I are also, as he said, we operate a gaming commission in Louisiana and started that from scratch when it had no experience when the casino opened. So we have in both in our New Jersey hat and our Louisiana hat, been involved in those situations. I guess I can speak for Jim and Bernie that in administrative capacities, both on the public sector and in the private sector in casinos, they were administrators at a high level in the operations of the casino activities themselves, the casino operations themselves. So we do know that. We tried to point out some of those. For example, the units that needed to be formed and so on. So we hope that you can achieve some confidence in our experience and our ability to handle those tasks.
Okay. Anybody else? Last shot. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. You guys have been here twice, and you've given us a lot of time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, and
we will be.
we'll just leave by saying that we can get this done for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will be moving as quickly as we can to make this decision for obvious reasons. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go back out.
Yeah, Janice will take you out the back and then bring in our next guests. While we are waiting for our next guests, I'm going to have a quick facilities break for anybody who would like it. I will be right back.
Good. How are you? How are you?
Okay, we have the people that matter here, I think. Thank you, folks. I really appreciate your coming back. This is a lot of time and a lot of commitment, and I appreciate it very much. The floor is yours. You did give us a presentation, which we do have here, if you want to start with that, but the floor is yours. Sorry, our second finalists, excuse me, are the folks from Spectrum Gaming, headquartered in New Jersey. I'm sure they will tell you something about themselves, but they were one of the two firms that we came up with as finalists in this gaming consultant process. You're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Frederick Gushin. I'm Managing Director of Spectrum Gaming Group, and with me today is Michael Epps, who is an independent contractor with Spectrum Gaming. I'm going to review our proposal, and I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have for us. We want to first thank you for inviting us to present today. We appreciate the opportunity, and we know you're starting this path of casino operations and the licensing process. It's an interesting process, to say the least. It's a process that we've been through on a number of occasions, both in the United States and internationally, and we hope to bring our experience to bear. We did prepare a brief PowerPoint, and I'd just like to introduce you to Spectrum Gaming Group, what we do and how we do it, some of our key team members, and talk a little bit about how we would approach the strategic plan and the related issues relating to gaming regulatory services. Now, Spectrum Gaming Group's been in business since 1993. We have decades of regulatory, licensing, and public sector experience. We've actually conducted numerous complex, sensitive, gaming-related investigations. We're under contract to a number of states at the present time doing casino licensing and vendor licensing investigations. And as I'll discuss in a minute or two, we're still under contract to the government of Singapore out in Asia. And those of you who may have followed Singapore just by way of passing, Singapore this year will surpass the Las Vegas Strip in terms of revenue. So it's one of the most successful RFP process, and we've been fortunate enough to be with the government of Singapore since November 2005. We understand the gaming industry. We are primarily regulators and have a law enforcement experience. We understand the unique challenges that gaming commissions face. We understand the relationships and the balances between the public sector, the private sector, and always maintaining that balance. But the regulation of gaming, the integrity of gaming is the threshold upon which it's all based. Without the integrity of the process, without the integrity of the regulatory process, everything else kind of falls. Now, you have our full bios in the formal proposal. I'll be project manager for this job. Bill Kisby will be deputy project manager. He's former New Jersey State Police, headed up casino intelligence during the time I was there, and has acted as deputy project manager on many of the jobs for Spectrum over the years. Michael Pollack, who's the other managing director of Spectrum Gaming, will head up the casino license RFP team. Steve Ingus, who's an attorney, former assistant counsel to the Casino Control Commission, will head up the regulatory law enforcement team. And John Bowman, who also has governmental experience, will head up the commission organizational and administrative team. Mike Epps will work with Steve Ingus here on the regulatory and legal matters, and I should note Mike is a former vice chairman of the New Jersey Casino Control Commission. He was a two-term commissioner there. And we also have on our team Ted Grove, who headed up casino prosecutions and has worked with us on a number of these projects over the years. And he's been brought in to look at and evaluate the law enforcement versus the regulatory issues which all gaming commissions face. And we also brought in Margaret Tao, who headed up the Singapore RFP process. And again, as most people believe, the Singapore RFP process was the most transparent and most successful gaming RFP to come down the pike ever. The next chart is how we're going to organize for this engagement. Again, 3 teams, a casino licensee RFP strategic planning team, commission administration and development team, and a regulatory and law enforcement team. And we have people who will be working in each of those sections, and obviously there'll be a lot of communication between the different teams to make sure that you get the best product that you need to make your decisions. We look at our job is providing information to the commission options so that you can ultimately make an informed decision. We're not the decision maker. The commission is the decision maker. We can make recommendations, but ultimately it's what the commission as you as individuals and as a commission feel most comfortable with going forward. Some of our recent governmental clients include the state of Delaware. We're actually still under contract with Delaware. We were responsible for drafting a strategic plan when they implemented table gaming. They had slot machines for many years, and about 3 years ago they decided to add table games. In addition, our client was the Delaware Lottery, but we also worked with the Governor's Office and the Department of Law and Public Safety. In fact, one of our recommendations was to create within the Department of Law and Public Safety a division of gaming enforcement to have that law enforcement balance with the regulatory enforcement balance. We're still under contract to Maryland. We're doing all their entity licensing work and vendor licensing. Again, we're still there. We've been fortunate enough to have some experience in Massachusetts. In 2009, Spectrum, under Michael Pollack's direction, did an economic impact study which helped set forth some of the broad guidelines and the economic issues related to gaming, the economic impacts. And in 2010, we were hired by the Speaker to help draft the regulatory portions of the legislation, and we worked with Brian Dempsey and his team there, and it was a very successful relationship, and a lot of what we came up with at that point in time survived in the legislation. We're still under contract with the state of Maine doing their entity and vendor licensing. We had a 2-year commitment to West Virginia. They had lottery and slot machines at the racetracks. When they decided to implement table gaming, they hired Spectrum, and we worked with them for 2 years. We had developed a strategic plan for them as well. The Pokagon Tribal Gaming Commission, we were basically responsible for all the regulatory issues, setting up the gaming commission, hiring the staff, hiring the executive director, writing the regulations, and doing the background investigations. We are still under contract to the state of Ohio. We're involved with strategic planning. Their first casino opens May 14th. The second casino opens May 28th. So somehow, some way, we're able to stay essentially on track there. We also were responsible for doing the entity licensing and vendor investigations, and early on, a lot of the legal issues relating to who had a file under Ohio law, which is going to be the same type of issues you face, who has to file under Massachusetts law. I'll just briefly go through some of our other clients. We've been with Puerto Rico for 15 years. We've been with the U.S. Virgin Islands, their Division of Gaming Enforcement and Casino Control Commission, for over 15 years. Again, we've been most fortunate to have been selected by Singapore in 2005 to work with them. We did their entity investigations for there were 2 sites, one called Marina Bay and one called Sentosa. And there were 5 or 6 applicants in the first group and 5 or 6 applicants in the second group, and they entrusted Spectrum to do those entity background investigations, and we did them. They've hired us for special projects. We're still being retained to do the junket investigations. Unless there's a question on that, I won't go any further on that, but there are some of the most controversial investigations to come down the pike ever in the history of gaming, just because of the unique location of Singapore to Macau, and they also hired us for strategic guidance over the years. So we hope that relationship will continue. The next chart just includes some of our other governmental clients. I'm not going to go through them. In addition to what's listed there, we've worked for over 30 tribal governments over the years, tribal nations, tribal gaming commissions, and tribal casinos as well. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that Spectrum understands that when we're hired by governments, the governmental agencies putting a lot of trust in us, and we take that trust very seriously, whether it be a tribal nation, whether it be the government of Singapore, or any other government in between. We know governments need advisors who can work in a comprehensive, timely, and professional manner. Our focus has always been on the integrity of the process, integrity of the regulatory process. It certainly behooves everybody including the casinos, when that process is transparent, fair, and has the highest level of integrity. And just in my own governmental experience in New Jersey, you know, the press covered us every day, the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer. We know what it is to be under press scrutiny. The Singapore papers covered everything. Everywhere we go, Ohio, the Columbus Dispatch. So we know how to function in that environment. Everything, transparency is always better, and it always inures to the benefit of everybody. We can be trusted with complex, confidential issues. Most of our key team members have worked in government, and we have a long-standing track record having successfully completed many engagements. Now, on the strategic plan, this is our vision of how it would go down, but obviously, should we be retained, we'd want to meet with the commissioners and meet with other parties to refine this, because these are just our thoughts at this point, subject to change. We would want to review any prior reports. The key thing from us, from our perspective, is the RFP process. How the casino, who's going to apply for the casino licenses, and that is a very complicated process. In our opinion, it should be transparent. It has to be legally supportable. We've been involved in, when I was a state official in New Jersey, the New South Wales in Sydney casino had to be rebid 3 times because it didn't withstand legal scrutiny. We've been involved with the Singapore RFP process closer to home. You've seen what happened in Pennsylvania. You saw what happened in Illinois. So these processes can get very cumbersome. They have to be legally supportable. They have to be transparent. At the end of the day, it's basically the entry process of getting the process started. The goal of any strategic plan and the goal of regulation is to assure that only suitable individuals, companies, and other individuals participate in gaming. Suitability and probity is the key. If a company is not suitable, if individuals do not meet probity, they do not earn the right to get a privileged license, such as exists in the state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Also, assuring that the games are fairly played. The public entering the casinos must believe that the games are fair. If the games are not fair, then there's no reason to go there. Assure that all monies are accounted for in the casino, that the state is getting, that the Commonwealth is getting its taxes, that the money in the count room is getting properly recorded, that the money gets to the count room in the first instance, and again, implement all the state public policies which are in your Gaming Act. From an organizational perspective, we think it's important to avoid duplication, to address staffing issues, to address budgetary issues, have a timeline that everybody understands and that will be essentially the guideline going forward, the RFP process, the investigative process, the casino operational process, the vendor licensing, employee licensing, kind of putting it all together in one plan. Licensing, there's a lot of licensing issues in the Casino Control Act, entity licensing, vendor licensing, key employee licensing. All of those things have to be synchronized essentially so that when the casino open, all these different elements are in place, ready to go. Commission organization, the executive director, initial commission budgeting are all critically important issues, as are the law enforcement issues, criminal prosecutions, the relationship between regulatory enforcement and criminal prosecutions, outline for commission regulations, a timeline again for the opening of the casinos, a phased opening perhaps to get them open quicker, hard milestones, soft milestones, all of which play into the process of when a casino opens. We've just been through this process in Ohio. We developed their timelines and developed their commission staffing, and we're now in the process of implementing what was agreed upon. We look at this strategic plan as essentially a blueprint. We look at it as a collaborative process. We're going to be talking to a lot of people. We're going to do site visits. We're going to talk to government officials, want to interview the members of the commission, other relevant state agencies, the Attorney General's office, the state police. All the other stakeholders need to be heard, and their input needs to be synthesized and harmonized into one strategic plan. The potential casino licensees should also be heard, and any other interested party should be heard, and then we'll come up with essentially a blueprint and discuss it with the commissioners, options. It will contain a number of options which ultimately have to be decided by the commission. We look at this as a collaborative process as opposed to Spectrum just dumping a plan on you. Nothing in that plan should be a surprise at the end of the process, because all the issues will have been discussed, evaluated in the plan, and where possible we'll present options so that the commission can ultimately make a decision. The next two charts are just our guideline for ourselves in terms of how we would approach this job, again, subject to discussion with the commission to make sure we're meeting all of your needs. I won't take valuable time going through this, but we just wanted to put some sort of structure in place so that we all know where this is going. The deliverables will include a timeline and discussion of the RFP process for issuing casino licenses, commission organizational structure, discussion of advantages and disadvantages of the key options in the plan, and our recommendations. The last chart is when we were named one of the fastest growing companies in the U.S. by Inc. magazine. They said a focus on integrity has allowed Spectrum to thrive. That has been our mission from day one. We will never take a job that's a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest. We turn down enough jobs, as I mentioned, to keep a small company in business full-time, but when you do this type of work for governmental agencies, you have to err on the side of not taking jobs. As you said, Mr. Chairman, it's not the conflict per se, it's the perception of a conflict, and we take that very seriously. Thank you for allowing me to do the formal presentation. Mr. Epps and I would be glad to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, Commissioner Zuniga.
Thank you for your presentation. In your presentation, you describe roughly a 16-week strategic plan process, bit of a project, and I can see the steps well here. Thanks for that. But can you expound on after that process, the steps that this commission could take? You talked about collaboration. Can you just sort of give us a little bit of an idea, the blueprint, if you will? That's done. We can talk about that. But after the blueprint.
After the blueprint, I think the commissions typically adopt the plan once everybody's comfortable with it, and the plan then becomes the blueprint going forward. The investigation, the process would be opened under your law. The suitability determinations of the applicants should be made first before anything else, because that's such an important component. If a company can't pass a suitability determination, then it makes no sense to develop the public support or the local support or whatever that's necessary and what goes into this. Suitability is the foundation. And while that process is taking place, I mean, we would see the commission adopting its the regulations that aren't necessary for the RFP process. You have time there to develop the regulations, to hire the staff that will be in the casinos, to carve out the memos of understanding between the law enforcement and the casinos law enforcement group and the Attorney General's office for all the things that will be done in a way that will make it efficient. I am opposed to duplication of it. Just wastes money, and in this day and age, governments don't have money to waste. So it needs to be clear. All the interested parties need to understand their role in the process, what they're going to be doing, and you'll have time during the build-out to put essentially meat on the bone, but the strategic plan will essentially lay out all of those steps.
If I could, on a parallel track, what you will have the opportunity to do as you're building and working through that plan is to also develop your staff, develop your budgeting, figure out what you're going to look like and how you're going to operate as you go forward, because you want to be ready to go when the entities are ready to go, because the last thing you want is the commission to be the obstruction to progress. So on the parallel track, while that that process is building out. You're building your regulations that you can build over time, and you're also building your staff and setting your budgets so that you know what you're going to look like and how you're going to operate. So when they're ready to come to you, you're prepared and you're staffed up and ready to go so that they're not waiting for you to get this process started.
I've forgotten, is your cost proposal for the 16 weeks only? So beyond that would be more, or does that go on? Does it go on? I forget how you started.
Well, the proposal included the strategic plan and the items that were in the RFP, and basically some of the services were a little nebulous, so we're going to bill them on an hourly basis.
Okay. And the strategic plan was estimated at the 369?
Yes.
Right, okay. Commissioner Stebbins?
Going back to your project team, you identify two positions which maybe it's more internal than actually having a direct interaction with us, but an intergovernmental affairs slot and an editor slot, if you could just...
We have just found, when you have this type of engagement, we like to have an editor who synthesizes the material, who basically puts it in a uniform shape, the quality control, essentially. And the governmental affairs person, one of the items there was, in the proposal, seemed to relate to governmental affairs, to work with your person who will handle communications and governmental affairs if needed. And he has also worked on some of these projects in the budgeting and administrative side as well.
Would you tell us, in general, your view of the gaming industry? How has it evolved, and where do you see that evolving from this point?
Well, I'll focus on the American gaming industry and then Asia if you want to hear it.
Sure.
But the American gaming industry, I mean, when I was a regulator back in New Jersey, basically it was Nevada and New Jersey, and we've seen since 1991 this proliferation of tribal gaming and states getting into gaming over the years. I always thought there'd be a saturation point, but obviously I've been wrong. You have this expansion of gaming. You have states legalizing gaming for a variety of reasons, but the most important reason is to generate income. We see and every state's different. The experiences in all the different states, they're based on culture, based on the political environment, based on the way the states are set up. Some states, slot machines were legalized through the lottery. Most states, they've been legalized through gaming commissions. We prefer, quite frankly, gaming commissions because they have a dedicated focus on the integrity and the policy issues related to gaming. But historically, some states have done it through the lotteries because that was legally what they had to do to legalize casinos. In Delaware, the 3 racetracks are considered lottery agents, and that was the legal basis upon which they licensed them to have slot machines and now table games. So the state constitutions, the legal structure, the criminal laws in each state are different. And so that has explained some of the differences we see in gaming today. But gaming is an industry today that generally has, a high degree of integrity. Most of the companies are publicly traded companies. Up until 1980s, the public markets, the financial markets, would not invest in gaming because it didn't have the integrity. And I'm sure, as the previous group told you, once New Jersey and Nevada basically started the licensing processes, that made the gaming industry more attractive to Wall Street, to international financing. They didn't have to go to illegal sources or questionable sources to raise money. So in the U.S., there's been a transformation of gaming. We see now worldwide, especially in Asia, but also in South America and other places, where American companies are going overseas and investing in Macau and investing in Singapore. And it's raised a whole new set of issues. I'm not talking out of school here because it's been in the press. There are investigations in Macau relating to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and other things going on there. Macau is an unfortunate, it's successful financially, but from a law enforcement and regulatory perspective, it leaves a lot to be desired. Singapore from day one told us we never want to become like Macau, and they've stuck to that. You need governmental will in that part of the world to do that, and they were able, and so far have been able, and I have no doubt that they will continue to be able to distinguish themselves in that regard.
And on that note, can you speak a little bit more about the law enforcement background of your team and your...
Sure. Well, I was Deputy Director of Division of Gaming Enforcement, Assistant Director, and an Assistant Attorney General, and I was responsible. We had at that point 170 state police assigned to us, and I was their civilian supervisor. They also reported primarily to the colonel of the state police at that point in time, and we had squads in each house. Bill Kisby was New Jersey State Police. He's the Deputy Project Manager here. He retired in 1996, and he was head of our casino intelligence group, which was critical at that point in time. As you recall, in the 70s and 80s and early 90s in New Jersey, there was a mob war for control over Atlantic City. I'm sure Commissioner Cameron will fill you in, and it took a lot of governmental will to basically try and get that situation under control. We expanded the Casino Control Act to include construction because we saw unsuitable companies and individuals moving. They couldn't get a vendor license, so they would move to the area that was unlicensed, which was construction, and we expanded the law to include construction as part of the Casino Control Act at that time. There was a labor union called Local 54 that was allegedly, it was mobbed up. It was not alleged, it was mobbed up. And New Jersey Gaming Enforcement took that case up to the U.S. Supreme Court to try and carve out an exemption to the national labor laws to allow New Jersey to have that labor union register, and we were successful. So that was a very important case. We had the governmental will. Some of the other people on our team, Ted Grove is an attorney. He headed up casino prosecutions in New Jersey, and we would decide weekly which cases would be handled on a criminal law basis and which cases would be handled from a regulatory enforcement basis. And you'll be facing the same issues, every week as well, because it's important from an evidence handling, from the approach to the case, how it should be handled. So we thought Ted would bring that type of experience into the team in that regard as well.
Commissioner Stebbins, anything else?
Obviously, if you look on our agenda, one of our other conversations we're having is about interim executive director, permanent executive director. Looking at the strategic timeline, have you had opportunities where you're stepping into a process where there's really no full-time executive director on board? How do you kind of ease through that transition period?
We've done that, in multiple assignments in the past. I mean, we've worked with the chairman and the members of the commission till you begin your staffing process to provide you with the professional services. In Pokagon, we interviewed for the position. They wanted us to do the interviews for the commissioners and for the executive director. In Delaware and West Virginia, they were already mature organizations, so they had a staff in place, and we just then overlaid the gaming regulatory staff on what they had. In Singapore, we started from scratch, basically. Before the Casino Regulatory Authority was established, we worked for the Ministry of Home Affairs. Casino Regulatory Authority is part of the Ministry of Home Affairs, and we were there basically present at the creation before even the Casino Regulatory Authority was established. So we can work in any environment. It's really, we're going to be making the same recommendations to you, and when you hire an interim executive director, we'll work through that individual as well.
I guess it's sort of a process whereby if that's the way you would have it, we would be your staff until you had a staff, and as you grow, we would scale back and only be there as you need us to be. So if you need us to be advisors, if you need us to be staff for you, whatever the commission's needs are, we're prepared to be for you until you're up and going on your own as part of that process.
Commissioner McHugh?
I wanted to ask you, Mr. Epps, you've sat where we have fairly recently, and two questions really. Specifically, would your role in this process be, first of all, and secondly, what do you see as the most important 2 or 3 things that we have to do in the next 6 months?
Well, the first question is with respect to Spectrum. I have been an independent contractor to them, particularly on regulatory matters, and I'm an attorney by profession, so some of the legal issues that may come up with respect to gaming, although not specific to the state of Massachusetts, but more broadly, those issues as they relate to gaming. So I would sit in those roles as you construct your regulations and things like that, and as you set your organization. So my experience comes in that regard. So that's how I serve Spectrum. But as a commissioner, some of the things I see is as most important for you as you move forward. The first is to keep your focus on what your objective is, and that is to make sure that the games offered in Massachusetts are conducted fairly, so that the customer, because you serve two people, you serve the customers who come to play in Massachusetts, so that they understand that they have a fair shot at a game. So the games are regulated, it's a highly regulated environment, and the games are fairly regulated so that they have an absolute fair shot at playing these games. Second is that you protect the citizens of the Commonwealth, that you make certain that this operation that they've approved, which will generate revenue, generates the proper revenue. So your job is to make sure that the games are properly operated and the revenue is properly collected. Other than that, your other objective is to be, like I said before, be ready when it's time to be ready, so that you're not an obstruction to the process, but then be thorough in your process as you review those candidates who are seeking to participate in Massachusetts, because it's a privilege, not a right. And you have to be firm in that and be willing to stand by that conviction, because a lot of times expediency is a competing factor to fairness and to integrity, and you have to avoid the urge to be expedient at the complication of, or at to the detriment of integrity and thoroughness. So my advice there is, don't hesitate to take the time that you need to be thorough in your integrity issues, because that's the most tantamount part of it. Going back to a reference that Mr. Gushin made, in the early 80s, when New Jersey came onto the scene and really began to be as stringent as it was with respect to regulation, which is about the same time that Wall Street began to take notice of the gaming industry and not be afraid of it, because for a long time it was seen as a seedy operation. But once it became thoroughly regulated by stringent regulations like those in New Jersey, it became a more attractive model for Wall Street money and investment dollars, because it was a well-regulated operation that their constituents didn't have to be afraid of. So integrity is the key to what you do, and your focus is that this privilege to participate in this industry here in the Commonwealth is a privilege and not a right. So the people who are interested in participating have to go through the hoops and jump through all the hoops that are established in the law if that's what they want to do. They don't get to change the law. They have to comply with the law, and whatever it says must be done, and you take them through that process, because your integrity and how you conduct your operation is what stays with you. And so that's the most important thing I see as you sit there is your job is not to make it easier or harder for them. Your job is to make sure they do what they're required to do for you, in order for them to participate in this process.
And recognizing all of the caveats that go with this, looking at your approach, the approach you're presenting, and this is a question for either of you, we would have a plan in 16 weeks that would be have a number of steps laid out, priorities assigned, objectives and goals and milestones, and kind of plan you have when you're going to build a complex building, for example. Where under your guidance and with your tutelage and your background that you bring to it, where would we be in, say, do you have any vision? Is it possible to say where we would be in 6 or 8 or 10 months? Taking into account the need to preserve the deliberateness that's essential to ensure that integrity in the process.
Well, let me answer, and then Mike, you can supplement. I mean, down the road, I couldn't agree more with what Mr. Epps has said. In the life of a casino, if it gets delayed 3 or 4 months, it's not the end of the world. It's going to be here for the next 50, 60, 70 years. So it's more important to get it right and to be deliberate and to make sure that the process has the maximum amount of integrity and transparency. So yes, everybody wants to get open. The pressure is always to get open. In Ohio, the commission put a 2-month hold on because of some of the legal issues that we faced and because of the investigative process. The legal issues delayed the investigative process, therefore the opening process was delayed. So they're all related. 6 to 8 months down the road, you can probably have some emergency regulations in place, have the RFP process pretty much under control, maybe bid, and so certainly sometime by the fall, start the background investigations of those companies that have expressed interest in participating in.
You're talking about the first tier of the application process, right? What you referred to as the probity step. I think was that you? Yeah.
Exactly. So that is a reasonable expectation. The key thing is and one thing which the strategic plan does is to get everybody on board. The casinos have one perspective. Maybe certain stakeholders have another perspective now. The strategic plan puts everybody on the same page. They'll know exactly what is going to happen. And it gets everybody moving in the same direction to get to the same goal, which is the opening of the casinos, but more importantly, the regulation of those casinos thereafter.
And 6 months down the line, what you may see in place is the beginning of your application structures, building your applications according to your statute, your applications at each level, your key employee applications, your vendor applications, your some of those other applications, and those processes begin to be built to figure out when like for example, when the RFP is implemented and who's going to move forward, what those people can expect then if they're successful, who they'll have to bring forward, who's probably going to be looked at, and things of that nature. So as you build, as you start the RFP structure, you also build your application structure so that when the successful candidate is selected, they can be handed an application, and the people that they have to get to fill out the documents can start doing that paperwork. The last thing you want to do is have your candidate selected and then tell them, we'll have you an application in another 6 months because you're building your application. So all those things kind of work in tandem. So the applications are built and the process is begun so that you can then have them fill out the applications, because once those come back is when your investigations start, and that process could become lengthy, and then you may run into some issues as to who believes they have to file, and then that's where some of the legal issues come in. But if those things are in place or are built as you go along, once you're ready for them, they're ready for you.
Thank you.
Quick question on the timeline. First 2 weeks, you talk about key stakeholder meetings. Can you give me just a quick glimpse as who you think that group includes?
I think it includes the commissioners. I think it includes representatives of the Attorney General's office, the state police, perhaps any other government, the budget people, the administration people, how an agency is set up, so that we could then figure out what these budgets are based on the salaries that Massachusetts pays. Each state's, like I said, different. And we would like to get a running start because, 16 weeks goes by pretty fast.
No kidding. You have something?
No, I was actually going to ask a very similar question. So.
This is a tough business, the gaming business, with a lot of controversies, a lot of pitfalls. Has your firm or any of your your key people been involved in any controversies, any issues that we ought to know about?
No, we basically, I testified before the Pennsylvania grand jury. That I didn't consider it controversial, but basically, I did offer testimony before the Pennsylvania grand jury, and our work is basically very transparent, and we've never had any legal or integrity problems in the company.
Okay. You've got a lot going on in your firm, and a lot of places all around the world, and a lot of contracts that are a lot bigger than this contract. But you are ostensibly the project manager. How realistic is it that you can really be what we would think of? We think you say project manager, you think kind of hands-on, as opposed to sort of the project supervisor or the executive overseer. How realistic is that you can really be the project manager, and who are we likely to see as the real serious boots on the ground personalities?
Well, I'm a hands-on person, so you'll see me and you'll see the team leaders, and in my absence, you'll see Mr. Kisby. Their commissioners may not be aware, but we have an Asian arm based in Bangkok, a company called Spectrum Oso Asia, which is we have offices with them in Tokyo, in Hong Kong, in South China, in Macau, and they are finishing. We're almost finished, close to the finish line with those junket investigations in Singapore. We don't know if there's going to be another RFP or not, but we'll address that. Ohio, we're finishing up the entity and vendor licensing. Maryland, Caesars has applied in Maryland as well, and so that's really the same investigation we're doing for Ohio. So you'll probably see more of me than you want.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Thank you very much for coming. This is great.
Thank you for having us.
Time, and we appreciate it very much. We will be making this decision as quickly as we can. I should say for the record that any decisions that we do make, we will be doing our own background checking, so anything that we do here will be subject to that kind of last-minute vetting, which I'm sure you would understand.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, what we wanted to do was ask Commissioner McHugh to give his report from the reviewing that we had done earlier on, subject to whatever else has come up in your mind since then. And then we'll just talk about it and see where we are.
So I think that you saw what you saw a difference in approach between the two groups. The first group, the Mitchell and Carroll group, Michael and Carroll group, is steeped in law enforcement and investigatory experience. They have done this kind of, their law enforcement background permeates the team. All of them have extensive experience in law enforcement, both in the federal side and on the state side. They are well focused on the kind of investigation and background checks and the training of people to do investigation and background checks, the nuances and the subtleties of investigation and background. That is an essential part of this kind of operation going forward. We have relationships with the state police, with the Attorney General's office, with the ABCC and others, and they're very heavy there. They've spent a lot of time on substantive regulations and in substantively regulating and giving advice to regulators on the casino industry, and so they bring that strength. The Spectrum group has perhaps not as much, at least we didn't hear as much, we didn't see as much of the hands-on enforcement investigatory piece as the first group did. But what they do bring is a focus on planning and a focus on structure and a focus on creating a framework within which we can move forward, and a framework that is created in a participatory fashion so that we understand what the stakeholders want, what we want ultimately prevails, but so that we can build something based on the understanding of the stakeholders, and so that we can really have the kind of a plan that we need, as I said when we were talking, that you'd need if you were building a complex building. We have so many things to do and so many pieces of this puzzle to fit together that we really need some help in creating an organized, publicly available target and set of priorities, goals, and milestones. We're not going to meet them all. Inevitably, things come up, but that it seems to me, a way to start off. There are strengths in both of those, and it seems to me the best, I'm only speaking for myself, but Commissioner Crosby and I talked after the initial review period. It seems that there is value in both of these service providers, and that the ideal solution would be to try to take advantage of both of those qualities and both of those capabilities and get the best of both strengths and negotiate further with them as to a statement of work subject to the background checks and other kinds of things that would allow us to go forward and get the best of both worlds. Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
No,
or
I'd
differ
rather
with
yeah.
that. Or,
No, I certainly don't differ with that. I mean, I'd rather wait. I'd rather hear from you folks before I say any more. So,
I want to make a couple of points. I remember because I did check, and for the record, the RFR specifically spoke about our ability to select more than one respondent. So it's great that that flexibility was there in the RFR for a procedural matter. But I also agree with Commissioner McHugh that the approach, the structured approach of the last spectrum, in terms of the focus on the blueprint that they call, is very important. Is something that has been very much in our minds. At least I can speak for myself as we undertake this process. But the other group, Michael and Carol, focus on enforcement was also very positive. So I shared that opinion.
Yeah, I probably don't have much to add. I was impressed with, first of all, I think we're lucky that we found two such quality respondents. And I think both of them stressed what we already know is about the uniqueness of Massachusetts. I think it was Michael and Carol that talked about how well we've structured the legislation. Now turning that into regulations is another piece of it. I did find they focused their priority on what appears to be their strongest area of expertise on the enforcement side. At the same time, I appreciated Spectrum laying out a timetable and really putting a little more meat on the RFP process, which, as we all know, there's some serious timelines in the legislation that we need to be mindful of. So, you know, if it's possible to potentially negotiate and blend these two, I think that would be to our advantage.
I'm torn. Sort of on paper, the PowerPoint presentation of Spectrum is much more impressive. I mean, they're much more buttoned up, and I don't particularly doubt that what's behind the PowerPoint is right. I mean, the recommendation, Stan McGee, who works for the Secretary of Housing Economic Development and was the governor's chief contact person for the Spectrum project when they did the first project, spoke well of them. But the Gushin, the head of the company, is the one who does all the talking. And he did all the talking at the other time. And we never, this guy Kersby or whatever he is, who's the deputy project manager, we've never met. And the next tier down, the 3 team leaders, I think we met 2 of them, and they were not, one was on the phone and we never heard from him once, and the other was not particularly impressive. So we don't really, I don't know really who's going to be doing the work. It's not going to be Fred Gushin. It's just not possible, and no matter how proactive a manager he is. On the other hand, the Michael and Carol folks were much funkier and much less responsive to the RFR's explicit direction on the strategic plan, and didn't really respond to that in a way that was visually appealing or even sort of logically appealing. But unfortunately for them, this round, their strongest person wasn't here. This Kathy, what's her last name? Kathy O'Toole would be the person on the ground. Of all the teams, she's the only one who actually lives in Boston. She's in Ireland right now, but she's coming back. So we would have an on-the-ground project manager who's a known quantity, who was impressive, and she did more to sort of pull the rest of those guys, they were guys, into a kind of an organized, coordinated approach to us. And she gave me confidence, and even though the team was kind of funky, they're all cops, they don't know how to do PowerPoints. He had his daughter do the PowerPoint, that she would be able to pull that team together and use the expertise which is there but doesn't present as well. So I'm sort of torn. I do agree, and Commissioner McHugh and I talked about this, the taking advantage. The RFR was envisioned to give us access to a pool of resources so that we could pull on those resources as needed. I don't see an easy, clean break between the two. I couldn't right now at the moment say, okay, let's have one do X and one do Y. And it's a little weird, to have a double team arrangement. But I don't come down with a real clear, comfortable feeling. I think if we had a project manager from Spectrum who really is likely to be the acting project manager and was really impressive and did most of the talking and orchestrated his or her other team partners and let them show their stuff, I would have said Spectrum, was a home run. But they decidedly didn't have that. So, and that gives me some pause.
Well, I think one approach is to today, if we're in agreement, to try to get a more specific statement of work that would draw whatever kind of line or between what the two would do, or talk about overlapping lines and how we're going to deal with that and how that would be priced, and then get some better statement of who specifically is going to do what to try and take advantage of that. Because while Kathy O'Toole did rein them in and get them focused at the discussion we had, the focus was still on the law enforcement and training and vetting and security piece rather than the strategic planning piece. And I think that starting right now on both this front and, as you'll hear me say in a few minutes, on the legal consultant front, we really need a strategic plan to help us get focused. Even if the strategic plan is a plan that somebody else carries out. So.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So, would your suggestion be that we vote to qualify each of them?
Yes.
And then set the task, led presumably by me, I guess,
right,
to negotiate a scope of work and to and turn that into operational structure and then contracts with presumptively the two of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we want that in the motion, I can attempt to put that in the motion.
Yeah, no, a little bit like, you know, I used to see this in some of the consulting work we've done, I've done in the past, what we would call a diagnostic phase, if you will, somebody to come in and you know, both of these entities really, to come in.
What was that
a
phrase?
diagnostic phase, to come in and put real meat to the statement of work, some detail as to how many meetings a week, how many visits to Boston, not just these generic, you know, we'll do site visits and we'll meet with stakeholders. I do think, by the way, that 2 weeks for meeting with stakeholders might be too short, but you know, that's where all those things get hashed out. You know, if you're talking 3 stakeholders, then that's fine, but if we're talking about 10 or 15, then it might not be possible.
Right.
So the long story meaning, if we could engage them to put a detailed work plan or statement of work, as you say, Commissioner McHugh, might be a worthwhile operation or exercise, rather.
Anything else? All right, you want to try to put that into a motion?
Yeah, I move that the commission qualify both firms to, subject to further background checks, to provide services to the commission for the planning of the gaming side of the commission's business, subject to negotiation by this chair of a detailed statement of the work to be provided by each of the two. Is that comprehensible?
I'm not sure what the clarification process, but if it ended up that for one reason or another, within this, is it possible that we might end up with only one of them?
Yes.
Okay, so it's really sort of a free, an open structure to try to firm this up, nail it down, and strike a deal.
Yes, and trying to take advantage of the best of both, but if it turns out that the homogenized capacity of one is the better way to go, then we can do that.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Any further discussion? Then all in favor of the motion that is recorded somewhere and which we will recapture, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we can find Commissioner Cameron. You should be a part of the negotiating team, but you know, if you've done that as consulting firms, you know what you're talking about.
It's just the link.
Hi. We made a dramatic decision to approve them both. We'll fill you in on the details later on.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for speaking up. All right, we're now on item 8, it being 3:30, not too bad. Item 8 is a discussion and hopefully selection of a law firm pursuant to, also to an RFP, a recent RFP. And I will ask Commissioner McHugh to describe the process and recommendations for that procurement.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. On February 29, 2012, the same day as it issued the gaming consultant RFR, the Office of the Governor issued a request for responses in which it sought, and I'm quoting here, legal advice and services relating to implementation of the Gaming Act. The Office of the Governor issued that request because the Commission was not in existence at the time, and indeed it would not come into existence for the next 3 weeks, and the Governor sought outside counsel to provide legal advice and services related to various components of standing up the Commission, that is, getting the Commission underway and getting it the regulatory and legal advice it needed in order to do its initial job. And also on the initial phases of preparing for implementation of the Act by the Commission when the commissioners were named and sworn in. At the heart of the desired services were such things, and I'm going to quote again, as promulgating emergency regulations for the implementation, administration, and enforcement of the Act, application of the conflict of interest laws, open meeting laws, and other Massachusetts-specific laws, codes, regulations, and the operation of the Commission, and preparation of potential codes of ethics and procurement documents and procurement regulations and rules. The kinds of things, that is, that any public organization needs to have in place in order to start effectively. Deadline for the responses was March 21, 2012. The RFR provided that the responses would be reviewed by the Office of the Governor for technical compliance and then by an evaluation committee the Office of the Governor designated. By March 21, the Commission had been appointed. It was appointed that day. Our appointment papers are signed that day. And a review committee consisting of myself and Attorney Abim Thomas was designated to review the responses. Attorney Thomas being a member of the Governor's legal staff, and it was the Governor's legal staff that was still taking the lead in this. The review criteria included expertise and experience in advising public sector clients about regulatory startup issues, range of services a bidder is capable of providing within the scope of service being solicited, references and past performance, capacity to commit personnel and resources necessary to provide high-quality services in a timely and responsive manner, proposed fee arrangement, completion, presentation, and responsiveness of the response, of the bidder's response, and any and all relevant information about the bidder that was known to the Office of the Governor. The Office received 4 responses by the deadline, and after review, Ms. Thomas and I recommended further consideration of 3. A firm of Shefsky and Froelich of Chicago, Illinois, who, by the way, also responded on the gaming side. Deutsch, Williams, Brooks, Renensis, and Holland, PC, and Anderson and Krieger, PC, of Boston, and the 4th was Michael and Carroll, one of the gaming respondents from whom we heard earlier. Both Shefsky and Froelich bid for both sides of this. Both Shefsky and Froelich and Michael and Carroll bid for both sides. The Office of the Governor designated Ms. Thomas and me as reviewers who would meet with the 3 if she were available, and the Commission would make the final selection. That was the process the Office of the Governor promulgated. With the desirability of having these meetings before today's meeting in mind, Ms. Thomas was unavailable due to a series of prior commitments, and so I asked Chairman Crosby to meet with me in her stead, with her approval. So Chairman Crosby and I met with all 3, and they all are experienced in the relevant areas. Shefsky and Froelich, which also, as I said, submitted a bid for the gaming consultant, has done significant work in the gaming regulatory field, and much of its response during our interview and discussion with them focused on the gaming side of its experience, on what it could do in the regulatory field and its work with gaming regulation elsewhere. It proposed to partner with a local lawyer, Mr. William Geary, who's had extensive governmental experience in the Commonwealth, but who's been working since 1989 as an executive of a business entity known as Clean Harbors Environmental Services, Inc. He's retired from that now, and his contribution would have been to help us with staffing rather than the legal, strictly legal kinds of components of the bid. The firm proposed to acquire knowledge of local statutes and regulations, including the local versions of the Open Meeting Law and the Freedom of Information Act, and then based on that acquisition of knowledge to give us advice. Every state has its own version of an Open Meeting Law and of a Freedom of Information Act and of other things that are common throughout the United States but have local flavors. So that's how they would propose to do it. The firm also told us that it is currently in negotiations to represent the City of Taunton to provide assistance to the city in connection with its efforts to reach a host city agreement with the Wampanoag Indian tribe. So those have not come to fruition, but it is engaged in negotiations with the city now. Deutsch Williams, one of the two local firms, has done extensive work in municipal law, including the work necessary to start up various municipal boards and commissions and to transfer functions from one board to another. So it's done the kind of work that we're looking for. The firm serves as town council to a number of cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth, including the town of Foxborough, a long-standing client for whom it has done significant work and continues to do significant work of the type performed by town council, which is a general advice on all legal matters. Anderson and Krieger, the other legal firm, has also done extensive work in municipal law, including the work necessary to start up various municipal boards and commissions and to transfer functions from one board to another. It too represents a number of cities and towns, a number of regional authorities, a number of airport authorities. It's sort of carved out a niche in representing regional airport authorities throughout the state and throughout the nation. None of its clients has thus far evinced any interest in a gaming facility or being a host city. Its response in terms of the RFR was the most comprehensive in terms of precisely identifying the work a startup required, breaking that work down, assigning time, estimated times to that work, assigning teams to that work, and estimating the time that each team member would have to spend. Its presentation during our interview was the most precise, and it listed, among other components of its proposal, a sort of project manager who would guide the overall creation of a project in a manner similar, quite frankly, although the two are entirely divorced, to what we just heard about from Spectrum, creating, if not a Gantt chart, at least a comprehensive plan for identifying milestones and goals and the like that would allow us to measure our startup progress against known goals. The requirements on which the RFR focused are those necessary for startup interpretation, and they are complex and highly nuanced, typically requiring not only a interpretive ability, but also an understanding and a feel for the local flavor of the various laws. One has to have not only an understanding of the content of the law in order to be effective counselors, but also an understanding of the way the administrators are interpreting the law, the way the local courts interpret the law, the kind of common law, if you will, of that surrounds the way the statutes are interpreted and applied. So local knowledge is essential, and both Deutsch, Williams, and Anderson and Krieger have that knowledge. Anderson and Krieger's project plan approach, the precision with which it has identified the components of what it proposes to do, and the precision with which it has identified the time thinks it will take to accomplish those components, embody, I submit to you, the precisely focused approach to startup we need to get up and fully running as soon as possible with a minimum of false starts and with the maximum of competent advice. And it is for that reason that I would recommend and would be prepared to move after discussion and answering any questions that we engage Anderson and Krieger as outside counsel, subject to a background investigation that we're going to perform with everybody, subject to a precise identification and agreement on a statement of work and the normal attributes of a contractual undertaking. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. Chairman Crosby,
let me just add one. There were issues of one of the questions in the RFP, and we should have brought this up with the other folks too, was whether they have conflicts or not, to define whether or not there are any real or apparent conflicts. We didn't have to get to the issue of the conflicts with the other two firms because we decided that this one was the best. But do you want to speak to the issues of what this firm has of conflicts, if any?
This firm, Anderson and Krieger, has a potential conflict with a potential surrounding city, surrounding town. There's one town in their extensive portfolio that may someday be a surrounding town. But that is so contingent and far down the line that it's impossible to measure it at this point, and would not be an impediment to anything they undertook in the first 6 months, which is really the length of the contract. That will not conceivably come into play anywhere down the line.
And they also said that if they would recuse themselves, if asked, from anything relating to the casino business, should for some reason those lines cross at some point.
Right.
So it was a pretty distant issue. Any comments, questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
Excellent presentation. The only thing and I may have missed this, did they have specific experience, the firm you're recommending, writing gaming regulations?
No, but this is not what we're going to ask them to do, in essence. This is a contract in which we're going to ask for help on writing the code of ethics that we need to write, advising us with respect to the nuances of the open meeting law, helping us with the Freedom of Information Act, not so much with the Freedom of Information Act in terms of what's covered and what isn't covered, but how to set up a set of records keeping systems that comply with the law and make retrieval of records easy and accessible, how to deal with smoothly and efficiently with Freedom of Information Act requests, how to deal with other kinds of self-governance law and regulation that we need in order to do our business. So this is where their expertise lies, and this is the area that we're going to be calling on them for.
This is an important point of clarification because particularly the Chicago firm wanted to talk immediately about helping us write the regulations and so forth. If I'm not mistaken, the word gaming does not appear in this RFR. It's all about trying to get us up and running, but none of them fully got that. But this one that we're recommending got it much better and was much more thorough.
Right.
Even they talked about how they could help us with the gaming regulations, but that was not what this is about.
Right. Commissioner McHugh, as we will soon undertake more staffing of an executive director, and I know or I assume eventually a general counsel, an office of counsel, I guess, here at the commission. Was there any discussion with this firm as to how they could be part of that process?
There was not extensive discussion because this is a 6-month contract. Basically, this contract would contemplate a completion of its work in 6 months, and by that time they would bleed us into a more fully matured staff in which they would help us identify the tasks to be taken over. Outside litigation would be typically taken care of by the Attorney General. We have to talk further with them, but we've begun talks with them. There may be some litigation services. There may be some other special counsel services that they could provide. But this is really designed to get us up off the ground and going on our own.
Anything else? Do you want to turn this into a motion?
I would be happy to, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we engage Anderson and Krieger as outside counsel for the period contemplated by the RFR, subject to background investigations, to an execution of a contract containing terms and conditions satisfactory to the Commission, including a satisfactory description of the scope of the work the contract covers.
Have a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as offered, please indicate by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Once again, we're like 8 for 8. Commissioner McHugh, you may have to leave, and we're not going to get through this whole agenda. if that were the case, we might move the ethics item up to now, do that one, and then we could carry on if need be. Does that make sense?
All right, Mr. Chairman. I regret that I may have to do that because of a long-standing and unavoidable conflict. So let me talk briefly, because that's all there is at the moment about the ethics rules. The statute requires us to establish a code of ethics for all members and employees that shall be more restrictive than the code of ethics contained in Chapter 268A and 268B of the general laws. And I should explain that 268A and B basically cover conflicts of interest, and that's a topic included under the topic of ethics, which basically are rules designed to ensure the impartiality, both in reality and in appearance, of us as commissioners, and is something that is important and statutorily required of all bodies, but the requirement for an emphasized and heightened code of ethics is, for us, is required by the legislature. And so such things as contacts, various kinds of disclosures that may not be applicable to others, a number of things might fall into that category, and we're required to do it. The statute also requires the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission personnel who work with us to have such a code, such an enhanced or heightened code. It requires the Attorney General's Enforcement Division to have such a code. And it requires the State Police Gaming Enforcement Unit to adhere to our code, which means that we have 4 entities, us and the other 3, who all have the obligation to have such a heightened code. And it seems to me, and I throw it open for discussion with you, that it would make a great deal of sense to begin quickly to talk with the Attorney General about a comprehensive code that would apply to all people to whom this kind of a code has to apply, so that we have one set of rules, one set of enhanced rules, that those rules are clear for everybody, and that everybody operates and collaborates together under the same set. So in anticipation of this discussion, I've reached out to the Attorney General's office to see whether they would be amenable to that kind of a conversation before I put that on the table today, and they would be delighted to have such a conversation. So I throw it open for discussion among all of you.
I don't think there's really much to discuss. I agree with you. I mean, it's just something that's a high priority. It goes to the heart of us indicating that we are indeed committed to being the fair, transparent, and participatory process that we aspire to. And I think getting started, and we can also get, this will be a big project. This will be something we can get the help from our new law firm as well, once if we sign them up. The only other thing that I would mention, and there are a number of ethics issues, this may be as much for the public as for us, that we have to deal with in our daily lives. One in particular that I've talked about to you and we've talked about is my wife and I have personal friends who we socialize with regularly who may be or are involved in one proposal or another, and we've suspended those relationships until we figure out how to do that. I don't want to suspend these relationships for the rest of this term, but it's the kind of thing that is urgent, but also it gives a sense to the public of the degree that we're trying to think this through. And that particular one was, as the good weather rolls around, it would be nice if we could get to that issue.
Well, I think we can, and those are going to be continuing complex problems. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to any of them, but they do exist, and there are ways to deal with them. And in addition to working with a new code or statement, we also can work with the Ethics Commission. We've reached out to them, and they sit there to give advice on matters like this, and I'm sure we can find ways to We might not like the advice they give, but that's why they're there. And so there are ways to deal with that. I should add one thing, though, to this process and to this part of the discussion. And it sort of permeates what we're doing, and it contributes somewhat to the pace at which we can move. This is going to be a complex undertaking. We're going to have to look at drafts. We're going to have to look at pieces of things. And we are going to have to do this in a unique position of commissioners who have no staff as we move forward, at least initially. And the open meeting law requirements are things that we're going to have to adhere to, and we've talked extensively with the Attorney General's office about that, gotten some good advice from them about how the law applies to us fully, and so that's what we're going to do. And it may be that we have to proceed more slowly because we have to go through a lot of what normally, if we had a staff, would be done by staff in the kind of forum that we're in now. And it means that we proceed at a more deliberate pace, at least for a while, until we're staffed up and have a mature organization. So I think we have to be prepared to do that, and I think those who are watching us have to be prepared to understand that the pace at which we are going is in part a reflection of the deliberateness that this process understandably requires.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, again, for the public to understand as well, that it's a system. Just to give you an example, if we wanted to describe a job description for an acting executive director, what in the normal operations you would do up a draft, you'd send it to everybody would send their comments back, and that would be the end of that. We can't do that. That transaction almost surely falls under the open meeting law. We could not do that without having an open meeting announced 2 days in advance with that on the agenda. So we'll have to figure out a way to do it when there's not a quorum, then bring it to it. So it's just, there are a lot of people who are understandably impatient that they want this process to get moving for lots of reasons, and so do we. One issue is we need to do it right, but the second issue is we do have this important law that we need to adhere to, but because of the peculiar nature of our organization, it is going to put some pretty serious time constraints on our ability to move forward expeditiously.
Yes, and we simply have to devise procedures to move with the maximum speed we can, given those constraints, adhere to those constraints, and help everybody understand this is what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right. And just for the record, nobody's suggesting that we shouldn't do that. We're just trying to make it clear for everybody to understand. Right. We do, the open meeting law is there for a reason. It's a good law. It should be there. But we are a little bit of an unusual situation, and we just need to learn how to adapt to that and live with whatever the efficiency consequences are. Okay, I think that's it for that. I guess the bottom line is just simply urging you're sort of the point person on this project, to move this forward as quickly as we can, consistent with what the law has asked the legislation has asked us to do. Next on our list was number 9. We are directed by the legislation to assume the operations of the State Racing Commission in late May, and Commissioner Cameron has been taking the lead on this project, and we look forward to her comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At your request, Commissioner Zuniga and I have taken the responsibility for this transfer process. The State Racing Commission, as you just said, presently reports to the Division of Professional Licensure, and that will be moving over to the Gaming Commission. The law calls for this transfer to occur on May 20th of this year. We do have concerns about our ability to absorb those responsibilities by next month. As we're all aware, this is our second week of work as a full commission, and we really are working hard to meet those responsibilities. One of our strategies is to employ an industry expert to assist us with the transition. Just a status report on what we've done to date. Commissioner Zuniga and I have had 2 meetings with the Deputy Director of the Division of Professional Licensure, with the direct the person has the direct oversight, the State Racing Commission Transition Coordinator, that's a title, and other members of the management team. We've discussed oversight functions to include operations, licensing, financial management, legal affairs. I want to state that these individuals, the management team from licensure, have been extremely helpful during the transition, and I'm confident they'll be helpful until the final plans are executed. Additionally, we've been briefed by members of the state police who have responsibility for racing investigations, a status update on what those investigations are. And one immediate responsibility that we have acquired is the distribution of funds from this Racing Stabilization Fund to certain entities for the humane care, maintenance, and adoption of greyhound dogs that raced in the Commonwealth in the calendar year 2009. Mr. Chair, we have prepared a resolution which I will summarize in order that we may vote to execute, which will allow us to fulfill our obligations. Now, this resolution authorizes the execution of all necessary contractual arrangements, including interagency agreements, to satisfy obligations relating to the Racing Stabilization Fund established by Chapter 194 of the Acts of 2011. When resolved, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission does hereby adopt the method and criteria for distributing funds for the Racing Stabilization Fund previously developed by the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Relegation in consultation with the State Racing Commission pursuant to Chapter 167 of the Acts of 2009. And it will further resolve the Massachusetts Gaming Commission does hereby authorize and direct Commissioners Cameron and Zuniga to negotiate, finalize, execute, and enter into, on behalf of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, all necessary contractual arrangements, including but not limited to interagency agreements and amendments thereto in connection with fulfilling the Massachusetts Gaming Commissioner's obligations related to the administration of the Racing Stabilization Fund. Now, this was a responsibility that, frankly, is to be executed this week. And again, we worked in collaboration with the Division of Professional Licensure to put this resolution together. This will authorize us to move funds to the proper account and cut those checks this week. So at this time, Mr. Chair, I'd request that you call a vote to authorize the resolution.
So why don't you put this into, wasn't someone put this into a motion to adopt? You know, you're familiar with this, Commissioner. Why don't you?
Well, the motion would really read just like the last two paragraphs that Commissioner Cameron spoke about, which is that we move that the Mass Gaming Commission does hereby adopt the method and criteria for distributing the funds from the Racing Stabilization Fund that has been previously developed by the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation in accordance with the Chapter 167 of the Acts of 2009, as well as allow us to have the authority to negotiate what's called an interagency service agreement, in which this agreement, the Commission will enter into the agreement along with the Division of Office of Consumer Affairs in order to make those payments. They will continue to make those payments for us, but the money comes through the Commission by way of agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have two things, Mr. Chairman, that I might offer. If we, and this goes back to our previous discussion, as I understand it, if we create a two-person group to move forward with this by a formal vote, we have created a subcommittee. And if we create a subcommittee, the subcommittee's work is subject to the open meeting law, which means that the subcommittee would have to do all of its work on this signing and execution in a public meeting. We've got a posted public meeting. We have from now until Thursday to do this. And so that is an issue. And one of the ways that we can comply with the open meeting law and achieve the kinds of transparency that we need to apply would be to appoint a single member to be responsible for various functions, and then to report at our periodic and hopefully frequent meetings on what they've done. But at least we'd be able to move forward. That person would be able to come and bring whatever motions for approval they'd need. But I think we run the risk by appointing a two-person group of running into the subcommittee piece of the open meeting law, which is fine. But we just have to understand what we're doing there. The second thing, and what is the statutory section that creates this Racing Stabilization Fund? I can't find it. Do we have that right there? Because unfortunately, I think there's a typo in the legislation. And I mentioned that before.
It's Chapter 167 of the Acts of 2009.
Are you talking about in our legislation? Or are you talking about
in our legislation.
Oh, sorry. No, that... I can...
Our legislation creates the racing puts us in charge of the Racing Stabilization Fund.
Mm-hmm. It's around Section 60, I believe, or thereabouts.
Section of 23K?
Yes, page 122 in the printout that we have.
That's the racing. We're talking about the Greyhound Fund, are we not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, then
Yeah,
it's just the section preceding that.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was.
Section 58, I believe. And 59.
58.
58 or 59?
No, 59.
Yeah, 59. Sorry.
No, 59 of the legislation. I'm sorry to be.
It's all right.
Well, maybe we could move on for a minute, Mr. Chairman, and I could find that and
Okay.
just invite your attention to it. It may be.
What's the consequence of it?
The consequence of it is it's not clear who gets. I mean, one consequence is that read literally, it's not clear who gets the money. And I think that was not. I think the intent is clear, but because of what I think is a typographical error in the legislation, it's not clear who.
We may need a legislative
who's
fix.
supposed to get
Well,
it.
does this come under our ability to self-correct that was referred to by Mr. Michael, I think, early on? That he read a section that says we're authorized to interpret these in such a way as to something like that.
We certainly could move in that direction, but
Right.
we need to do that with knowledge of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to find
Good
that
point.
section and simply read to you what it says.
Okay.
And have us all on the same page
Okay.
as to moving
Well,
forward.
while you look for that, Commissioner Zuniga, would you be willing to amend your motion to make it just, I guess, Commissioner Cameron? Would you
Sure.
take the lead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I will gladly do that and move that the last portion of the motion be resolved that the Massachusetts Gaming Commission does hereby authorize and direct Commissioner Cameron to negotiate, finalize, and execute and enter into, on behalf of the Commission, the contractual arrangements for the payments from the Racing Stabilization Fund.
And report back to us regularly in open meetings.
Absolutely.
Right.
Second.
Okay. I can go ahead and talk.
Here it
You
is.
got
I
Okay,
found
good.
it. It's
Right.
section 80. It's chapter 194, section 87. So it's section 87 of the legislation, which talks about this Greyhound Fund. And it says, it says as follows, and this is Section 87A. It talks about it talks about the kennel owners, and it talks about the greyhound owners both. And it winds up by saying that provided that in no event shall the sum of payments exceed the amount dedicated to the Racing Stabilization Fund during calendar years 2010 and 2011, provided further that before any amount is distributed, the Commission shall develop a method and criteria by which to distribute such funds in an equitable manner among the kennel owners, and provided further that the Commission shall begin payment to the kennel on a biweekly basis beginning April 12, 2012. It seems to me that the word owners or something is left out of that. And so we can simply assume we know what is there, proceed in the way it was done before, and assume that that's a safe way to go. But I think we ought to do that with knowledge that ambiguity is there.
Okay, and that's something we can definitely discuss with the folks who know this better than we.
Right.
Commissioner McHugh, this resolution does speak to the fact that we will be using the method and criteria for distributing funds previously developed by the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation.
Right, and I think that takes care of it. I think we simply need to understand that there's, I think, a word missing from that legislation. This is a long piece of legislation. It's not unusual for that to happen.
Right. Okay.
And we simply need to know that that's there.
Just for the public who are watching, this is indicative of why we weren't sure that it made a lot of sense for us to take this over right now, because if you don't know what we were talking about, we didn't know about it either. When dog racing was outlawed banned in Massachusetts some number of years ago, an agreement was made to pay some of the parties who had lost their livelihood, kennel owners and dog owners, some small amounts of money that was derived from the revenues of the remaining tracks, the 2 horse tracks and the simulcast track, the simulcast facility. That revenues from that goes into a so-called racing stabilization fund, and under certain circumstances and at certain times, that money is distributed to those folks who lost their livelihood when dog racing went away. It is very convoluted, as you can hear, and that's one of many such dimensions to this element. The legislation rightfully, I think, and we'll get to another issue here, rightfully foresaw that all gaming probably should be under the Mass Gaming Commission except for the lottery. Therefore, the Racing Commission, therefore charitable gaming, which we'll get to, the legislation envisions that we would get our arms around that at some point. I think that's probably good public policy, probably makes pretty good sense, but doing it so quickly when we've got these other priorities to deal with is the issue that we're wrestling with. This has nothing to do with citing casino facilities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Okay, there's a motion on the table, amended with the need at least to do a little checking out. We have a second. Do we have any other discussion of this motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion is passed. Okay, yes, good. Yeah.
In closing, I would just like to acknowledge that we are aware that there are currently 12 full-time State Racing Commission employees and 23 contract employees who are uncertain about their employment future. We're working to resolve this issue as quickly as possible, and I just wanted to make note of that before concluding, and that's our report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and that's a very good point. You know, there are folks who have been working for the State Racing Commission, full-time and contract, for many, many years, some as many as 40 years, and their lives are hanging as we try to figure out how this happened. So I appreciate your making that point. Do we need a motion to authorize the consultant, or do we do that at the end of the day?
I think we do not at this time.
Okay, fine. All right, then I think we're ready to move on to item 11, the charitable gaming provisions. This won't take very long. There was a provision in the legislation that directed that the MGC, the Mass Gaming Commission, make a report to the legislature making recommendations about the management and oversight of charitable gaming, bingo games and casino nights and so forth, to the legislature, with the intent, as I said earlier, that the presumption, I think, as I said earlier, that probably regulation of charitable gaming should be under the commission as well. That is obviously a deadline we couldn't make. That was April 1st was the deadline. We had barely even gotten started then. We have talked with representatives of the legislature and said that we can't do that, but assuming we all agree today, I will write a letter to the legislature saying that we understand we're behind, but we will get moving on this, and there are conversations already underway. The Attorney General now has a significant oversight role of charitable gaming. We need to start a conversation with them, which is underway, I think, in the next couple of days. So I think what we just need here is a consensus from the group to authorize us to go forward, and in due time we may need to get some consultant help. This is actually a pretty big project. The charitable gaming revenues, I've forgotten the numbers, but it's like $1 or $2 billion in Massachusetts purportedly, which is more possibly than is ostensibly goes to Connecticut and Rhode Island for casino gambling. So it's a big, big number. In due time, this will be a very big project. But I think, just with your permission, I think I just want to put on the record that we are going to do this. I will be writing the legislative leadership, and we will get moving on this as quickly as we can. Anything else on that? Okay, certain personnel matters, item 12. There are certain issues here that we need to take one by one, and I think for starters, the issue is the search for, well, the ED to begin with, and then the issue of the acting executive director.
Mr. Chairman, and going back through the legislation, one of the key references I found to an acting executive director states the commission may designate an acting executive director to serve as executive director, obviously, until the vacancy is filled, or the absence or disability of the incumbent executive director. So the designate is an interesting term that they've used in the legislation, I think. In terms of posting the position for an executive director, I think it behooves us to move rather quickly.
You're talking the full-time director.
Sure. Yeah. Yep, for the full-time executive director. I think we, from the presentations we heard today, from both Michael and Carol and from the Spectrum Group, they have some pretty definitive timelines. The legislation lays out some pretty definitive timelines. I am reluctant to allow an interim to make some decisions and potentially hiring decisions to create a team which I think any incoming full-time executive director would welcome the opportunity to make those decisions for him or herself. I feel the finding a full-time director, it's a small population of people who I think are going to come to the table with the credentials that we're looking for. So I don't believe the timeline would necessarily pressure us into hiring an interim. Then you get into questions of, well, is the interim allowed to be a candidate for the full-time position? Is the interim have a leg up? Is an interim somebody who'd be willing to walk away from his or her current position to pursue the full-time executive directorship? Again, I think we have some concerns, some operational steps that we want to take in-house as a commission, that we might be afforded the opportunity to designate an acting executive director. This could be an individual that we might have the opportunity to pull from within state government for a limited amount of time. But I guess my point here is I would not wish to execute a search or a posting for an interim executive director. Move right to beginning to pull together a posting for a full-time executive director if necessary, secure outside services from a recruitment firm to help us solicit resumes. But I think we all understand some of the timelines that we're up against, and I think it just makes sense, especially in light of our efforts to bring on a gaming consultant to work alongside somebody in a full-time position, that we not, again, pursue a hiring process for an interim executive director. And
Not pursue a process, but simply see if we can find one to designate.
exactly.
Not have a search, a formal search.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, okay. Meanwhile, we are doing the search, a formal search with a search firm for the full-time director.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Those are just my thoughts on that position, but going back through and reading the statute and seeing we may designate, and of course, obviously, that applies to 2-3 years down the line when we do have a full-time on board and he or she leaves, we can appoint, obviously, designate an acting executive director in that lapse of service as well. But those are just my thoughts on kind of that key position, which is going to be essential to working with the gaming consultant that we select and negotiate a contract with, and again, moving the timeline along. Those are just my thoughts.
Anybody else?
Well, it seems to me that we ought to do that. We certainly could use somebody in the role of executive director as soon as possible, and yet it's going to take us time to get the final one. So having both would be great.
Yeah. Commissioner Stephens, I think what you're saying is we're looking for someone, an interim person who's really a good administrator to help us through the startup process and expedite the process for a full-time executive director with gaming experience.
Exactly.
I would concur with your thoughts on that.
Commissioner? Yeah, I definitely think that the executive director will need gaming experience big time. I don't think there's any question about that. I think we all agree on that. We might get lucky. It might happen quickly. Quickly would probably be 3 months. It might more likely be 3 to 6. Who knows? And I do agree that in the interim, we have these two different tasks. One is for the commissioners to do their work, which is these kinds of meetings and the substance of beginning to get into the process of developing the RFPs and the criteria and talking to the public about what we want and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, there's somebody should be building this organization, and right now we're doing both. So I think if we could find somebody, preferably with gaming experience, if we could happen to get lucky, some retired person who's done this kind of thing before, but if not, at least proven administrative skills, I would agree with that. So I think we are going ahead on an RFP for a search firm for the formal ED. Okay. Now, what would be the process? So I think we got a consensus on the acting ED, which is at least a presumption of getting one if we can find the right person. What would be the process for, I agree that I think the law makes it clear we don't have to do a particular process. I think there's no harm in posting the position. I mean, we can post the position, even as we're looking, and post it for a week or two. I think that makes good sense, and I think that's a principle that we can adhere to with no downside cost to us. So we write a job description, we post it, and we start looking, as all of us already have to some extent, thinking about candidates. Well, let's set up a process, somebody on whose desk the buck stops to do the initial vetting. Does anybody have an idea on how to do that? Would we have the same subcommittee problem? Could we ask 2 commissioners to take the lead on this, or would that be a...
I think the better way to go for expedition purposes and still preserving the kind of transparency that we need is to appoint in each instance a single commissioner to be responsible and to come to the other commissioners when she has made a recommendation, has recommendations to prepare, and we do that recommendation and consideration in the public meeting. Right. But that way we can move forward with somebody having one person having primary responsibility for something. And if necessary, we can go through an interview process like we did today with the finalists.
They'll love that.
Well, that's.
Well, we can. I think we're clear that the primary level of interviews can be confidential, but that does not have to be public, right? We don't have to make public.
As long as there's not as long as there's not a subcommittee. If
Yeah.
there's a subcommittee, then we have to convene a public meeting, go into executive session if certain criteria are met, and then do the screening interviews.
Okay.
But if a single person does it and comes to the committee with recommendations in a public meeting, then we can deal with that in that fashion.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to offer myself to kind of assume initiating the process and reporting back to the full commission at our next meeting.
Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, our next meeting may be sooner than later, so that would make this process easier, because I think we're all going to want to see and talk about the job description. And I do think trying to find a way to make a distinction between the commissioner's work, which is really to get about the business of, soliciting proposals for casinos and maybe a slots parlor in Massachusetts, as distinct from the work of setting up the IT, getting the HR going, working with the consultant, beginning to think about the gaming regs. If you can make that distinction, it would permit the person we'll talk about now, the chief of staff to the commission, is really right now sort of half acting as the semi-ED, doing all that other stuff. That would free her up to help support us so that we can do our work more efficiently. So if you can, do you agree with that distinction?
I do.
Okay. All right, so as a matter of consensus, thank you, Commissioner.
Mr.
All right,
Chairman,
good luck. Sorry the parking lot's so far away out here. The elevator is right down there, Jim. All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a consensus, I think, to move forward on that. Thank you very much, Commissioner Stebbins, and let's get moving on that. Anybody who's got ideas, for interim EDs, interim executive directors, please bring them up. Next personnel matter, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first two things we did when I was appointed was retain the services of Karen Schwartzman from Polaris PR, and she's helped us very much with our communications and the press issues and so forth, and also her background happens to be 5 years as an investigator in the Ethics Commission prior to getting into the public relations business, which gave her a tremendous asset for us as we've gone through this process. But she has recommended to us that we're now to the point where this is more than she can do. She has a consulting business with other clients, and this is, to wit, today's meeting is beginning to ramp up a lot. It recommended that we search for a permanent communications person, a quite senior person who can really help with the day-to-day press stuff, the events management, the web and the social media, a really big picture communications person, our outreach across the Commonwealth, et cetera. And so that process is in place. We've asked Karen to lead it up, head it up. She has asked Hank Shaffron, who recently retired as head of communications and public relations at Bingham McCutcheon, to help her, and the two of them are in the process now of soliciting resumes. We have said to them, as we've said in all these positions, that diversity is an absolutely high priority. Please be as aggressive and thoughtful as you possibly can. We want this commission and its employees to represent the people of the Commonwealth, and they are now underway. And they will do the vetting, and they will bring to us some finalists, and we'll have to figure out how to handle that in the context of the public meeting process. Any other thoughts on that? Thank you for the work you've done so far. You've been great. Okay, and the third, if Janice Riley is in the room, we're going to ask her to leave. No, we don't want her. We want her to stay out. Is she out? Okay. We're now on a personnel matter. I don't know how you do personnel matters in a public meeting, but we're trying to learn. Janice Riley, as I mentioned, was my chief of staff when I was Secretary of Administration and Finance. When I was appointed to this job, and we had this desperate need to get the logistics going, we needed to get office space, get computers and so forth, I asked her if she would be willing to leave the job she was in and come on board as a consultant to get us up and running, hired through this governor's resource that we've talked about earlier that was there to get the commission up and running. And she did. You know her. She's worked on this now for the last, I don't know, couple months, I guess, getting us ready. She has never been promised that this would turn into a full-time job, although clearly that was hoped for and suggested. But it was clear that I made it clear that this was the business of the commission. This was nothing that I could promise. We have gone to HRD, the Human Relations Division of the Commonwealth, given them a spec of the job that she's being asked to do, Chief of Staff to the commission. They gave us a salary range, which was, I forget, I think it was 95 to 105, in part because of her. She was previously making 93 or 4, and we have agreed that if the commission agrees, that we would convert her from a consultant to the full-time employee, Chief of Staff, at 97. Personally, I think we should hit the midpoint, which is 101, but she wasn't entirely comfortable with that, which is a credit to her. So my suggestion would be, if you all agree, that we bring her on as a full-time employee and start her at 97, and in 6 months, when the commission will have gone through a lot of evolution and we will have learned a lot more, that we take a look at her and her job description and her salary. But first of all, I'm interested in what you thought about how she's doing, and are you with that program?
Yep. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment on that. Just in the short time we've had to work together the last couple of weeks, Janice has been an excellent, tremendous asset, prepared, professional, very knowledgeable about state government and the things that we need to do to move forward. So I certainly concur with your comments and recommend that we do hire her full time.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would echo that thought as well. In the week that I've had well, actually, a couple of days prior to me coming here,
week and a half,
that I've had the pleasure to work with Janice. She's demonstrated a real knowledge of procurement issues, some of which we talked about earlier. She's been the one essentially doing a lot of the operations for us as well financially. So I look forward to her accepting and offering this permanent offer.
Okay, great. May I have a motion? So moved. All right. If you remember that motion, second.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. None. Now, Janice can come back, Brandon. Thank you. All right. We're getting to the end of the road. The item 13 on our agenda is new business. New business is within the rules of the open meeting law, a section where if things come up which the chair could not have reasonably anticipated was going to be on the agenda at that time, that we may bring up new things that came up at the time the announcement went out. We don't really have any of such things at the moment, so I'm going to move on from new business unless anybody else has anything. There was one thing I forgot to say at the appropriate place up above, and that is that we do have a number of briefings in our pipeline. We have Ethics Commission, the open meeting, the public records laws, the IG. There's a whole series of briefing sessions for all of the commissioners that we're going to be going through, and that training is in the pipeline coming up. That we can do together because that's a training session. Our next meeting is anticipated to be April 24th, 2 weeks from today, at the same time. Venue to be determined, but it may well turn out that there are other meetings sooner. You can see why we need to have these meetings frequently in order to do our business. So we will be in touch with everybody soon. But at the moment, the next meeting is scheduled for the 24th at 1 o'clock. There also may well be some other training and preparatory sessions. We're working on ideas for training us and through us, the public, of what's going on in the gaming business, what are the issues, what are some of our priorities, and if that comes together, we may have something to announce about that pretty soon, too. Have I missed anything else, folks, that needs to come up? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you all very much for coming. Thanks for us.
Yeah. Good work.
Yeah.
Good work.